Broadcasting live from the command center located in Jacksonville, Florida, this is Military Witnesses to UAP. I am your host, Shannon Scott. And backed by popular demand, located deep in the Missouri woods, my right-hand man, Rob Heatherly. We both have assumed the duties and responsibilities of continuing the conversation. So, buckle up, hold my beer, hang on, and let's get started with today's briefings. What is happening? What is happening? Today we have a special guest. Rob, would you introduce our guest today? Oh, let me unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted, Rob. Oh, now I unmute. Wait. One more time. Okay, I'm not going to touch it. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Take two.
Andrew is a longtime friend of mine for about 5 years now that was gracious enough to bring me into their ancient alternative history group. They're known as the Nub guys. I've worked with them to do a tremendous amount of research, and they helped get me up to speed on a lot of what I know now. And I still, engage with them on the team ongoing. And he's put it together, one of the largest catalogs of ancient hallmarks on megalithic structures and antiquity, and one of the most profound, knowledgeable people on the topic that I know, including Sherman and Jigidan and Phil and Dave from Ukraine Utopia. So these guys are awesome. So glad to have them with us tonight.
I appreciate it, guys. Mute my phone, by the way.
That's okay.
I have the chat.
I never mute my phone. I might get an important phone call. Hold on. Someone just texted me. Let's see if that was important. Yes, it was. It was from my wife. I need to know that. She's trying to get some new shoes, apparently, that I like. So let's go over some what's been going on. And I do have some items that people are wanting some swag from the show. I know, look, I'm not wearing the right hat, but Rob is. Those hats are not ready yet.
Yeah.
I need to find a vendor for that. And I have some really cool photos that I would like to sell. 100% of the proceeds will go to Shannon Scott's annual Vets and Vets for Wounded Vets and Pets. It's a charity that was named, that was honored, that Lou Elizondo and Rob Heatherly named that charity after me. And on that subject as well, right here, we have, I wrote it down wrong. We have 110 subscribers to, oh, here it is. Countdown to monetization, 110 subscribers to go, folks. So if you haven't already, hit that subscribe, hit that like, hit that notification. You never know, and we'll be on, because recently I've been sick. Rob hasn't been feeling well, and in order for us to be here, we both have to be feeling good. So, hey, it doesn't matter. We're here today. So, what's going on in the news, Rob? How are you doing?
Well, doing well. Just kind of getting through the fall hitting, and with the cooler weather, trying to get things done, which is a challenge always because of the physical limitations, but working through it. And yeah, it's easier to work through the cool and the cold than the sweltering heat of the summer. So I'll do what I can do, and that's going to have to be good enough. So yeah.
What was the temperature there today?
About 80.
Yeah, it's hot.
But we still have a lot of humidity.
It's been nice.
So it's not quite.
All right. So I've been spending a lot of time in the hospital. Imagine that. They sent me home hospitalization. And their concern was my health getting worse while there was a hurricane coming. Fortunately, it wasn't a direct hit. It went just south of us, and then went up the Atlantic. But we got a lot of wind. We had some down trees in the area, maybe some isolated flooding, but we survived it. God, we did not lose power, knock on wood.
Good.
Man. But we did have it flicker one time, and I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to jinx it. So they sent me back to the hospital, and there was a miscommunication. They said, "What are you doing here?" So they sent me home. So we're going to be having a big powwow. Well, someone's going to get in trouble because the left hand is not communicating with the right hand when it comes to my health. So we're going to get that ironed out. In the meantime, we have to have good communication. And I have to say, I have had nothing but stellar, sustained superior performance from Mayo Clinic. There's a reason why there's RVs in the parking lot and people fly from overseas to come to America to go to a Mayo Clinic. People like me who are complicated issues, and they have saved my life at least 7 times this year. So what can I say? They do a great job.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's a fact, Jack. It would be pneumonia. You hear people passing away from pneumonia? Yeah, that's what I'm fighting. There's some news on that. I'm going to be having a pulmonologist appointment very soon, and I usually ask toward the end of the appointment, so is there a new technology coming out? And sometimes they say yes. In fact, we want you to be part of this study. So I'm actually part of 2 different studies now. They'll be sending us packets and stuff like that. And there's a new medication they want to try on. I'm going to throw a ball in their court. I read an article, and I shared this article with everybody I knew, that there's this nanotechnology that can help with combating Pseudomonas colonization in lungs. And basically it goes in there and it wipes it out, according to the study, and they use mice. Since I cannot get a double lung transplant, double lung transplant, maybe this is the next best thing. So if a mouse can survive, maybe I can too, if it gets to that point. Yeah. What's that, Rob?
Yeah, the nanobots. Yeah, they were algae coated with antibacterial medications that were induced into the lungs, and in the test mice, it eradicated pneumonia 100%, eliminated all the bacteria, completely cleaned them out, and they were all healthy and thriving 30 days afterwards. So it looked like it was all upside and not so much any downside. I hope they can fast track that and get it your way.
I do too.
Get you a better quality.
I think that's an answer. Honestly, I mean, they need to try it on, on maybe something bigger than a mouse. My life depends on it. Honest to God, my life is going to depend on this study. Try not to get too sentimental here. One of the things I've been trying to do is live long enough that technology catches up. What I'd really like is for someone to grow some lungs that have my genetic coded information in it, so I can get a double lung liver transplant without any rejection, because that's the clock that I would have to be on. As soon as I get that transplant, if it was a normal transplant from a recipient, a donor, I'm on a clock. The clock is called rejection. It's only a matter of time until these organs are rejected from my body. They're like, hey, they ain't supposed to be here. And this is how most of these people who get the transplants, that's how they pass away. Luckily, I'm not on that clock. I was denied that transplant because they told me I wouldn't survive it. That was a blessing in disguise a little bit. Yeah. First of all, I don't have to. Sometimes when some doors are shut, others are open, right, Rob? Well, we know that for sure. We've had some.
Yeah, you
great
count your
doors
blessings and answered prayers at times.
Yes.
So the clock that I'm on now, and I don't think I've ever discussed this before. I'm on a clock. Everyone's on a clock, but mine's a little different. Mine is how long my body will until my body becomes resistant to these antibiotics. That's the clock I'm on. Unfortunately, I have become resistant to a lot of them. All the sulfur medications cannot be used. I've got one medication that costs $16,000 a month to use to keep me alive. So that's the kind of clock I'm on.
Yeah, you did.
And I bet you. Go ahead.
You did say you're going to try and bankrupt Medicaid and Medicare. Like, go for it, man.
No, I am.
Give her hell.
And I feel horrible when all this stuff. You know, just having a generator, right? I'm actually on a generator for oxygen concentrator, right? Over here, I've got a $30,000 ventilator. Yes, a ventilator. It's a non-invasive ventilator. I sleep with it, and I just sit here and I rest with it. Just renting that, I bet it's $100 or more a month. Another medication I know that costs over $3,000 a month is the Enbrel, and that's why I have to have the special doctors at Mayo, is because Enbrel is for my rheumatoid. That's why I'm sick. I'm sick because of rheumatoid. It attacked all my body here. By being on Enbrel, it lowers your immune system. So now I'm always constantly battling pneumonia and constantly lowering my immune system there. So it creates maybe some issues. But you know, I call it a fine wire act, right? If I slip either way, I'll fall. So I have to be, you know, hot on it. Okay. So let's go on to the next thing. I'm home. I'm doing better. So that's my story. I'm sticking with it. Now, I felt a little creative, and hey, hello, anonymous Rex. I'll bring up your question here in a moment. And hello, everybody. Hello, Julie. Man, there's people who out there who really care. I mean, you know the ones who really care, and you know who I'm talking about. Thank you for calling me and checking up on me, and it really does. It does wonders, especially when I'm in a hunt. Have any idea what it's like to get a phone call from Lou Elizondo? Sometimes it raised my blood pressure a little bit too much. Okay, but this guy is so awesome. He's always checking on me in the hospital. Anything I can, he can do, but we got everything under control here. But he's just an awesome guy. Rob, I can't, I can never get him on the phone. He's so busy. He never wants to talk on me.
Yeah,
so that's a lot.
Yep. AWOL.
Yeah, AWOL. Rob's AWOL with his friendship here. Okay, so I'm going to bring up some pictures here, and I like tinkering around with photos. That's all I do, really. Photography, videography. I've done some documentaries. I've done some a little cowboy show, which was pretty cool. But I thought one of the things I like doing is, for instance, if I'm going through someone's photo album and they take a picture, and then over here they take another picture, I'm able to do what they call a photo merge. Mm-hmm. And I like making it, basically it's taking two images and you got a brand new image of a wider area or something like that. The other thing I like doing is, let's say I have a picture of myself at 5 years old standing next to something at Disney, and I'll go over there, I'll be 50. Oh my God, I'll be 52 years old next month. I want a brand new watch, Rob. Okay, so I'll go over there, have someone take a picture of me, and then I can do this fade in and out of the same photo, right?
The same location.
I I thought about doing that with some very popular UFO photos. The Trent, I forgot the location. It starts with an M. If anybody in the chat can remind me, I want to bring up that photo now, and please tell me where it was taken. I know it was taken by a guy who was a rabbit farmer. His wife came in and say, "Hey, there's a flying saucer out here," and he came out and he took 3 photos. Right, that's the story. And then they never copyrighted them or anything. They had them in the living room. I think the kids, when they finally went and tried to get the negatives, the kids were playing with them underneath the table or something. So they were everywhere. But let me bring up those photos. I really am impressed with these photos here. Here it is. Bam. Let me get rid of the that thing right there. So stand by. I'm slow as molasses today. I got to go into banners. Boom, boom. Okay. Boom. Okay. So in the chat, folks, where was this taken? Let's see. Nobody has won that yet. But anyway, let's go on to the next.
Was that the one in Southern California? Were they?
I don't know.
No, that was the guy taking pictures of his wife in the garden.
The guy took a picture and he moved. He took a picture again and he moved again. So they're able to do geometry and they can actually tell the distance and everything. Right. There it is. Julie won. Boom. That's it.
Yay, Julie.
McMinnville. Something like that, right? Okay. You won the internet, Julie. And thank you for checking up on me. You're a good friend. Thank you very much. All right. So what I did, I went to online and I found that somebody took a picture of another picture of that area, and I think it was a wider one. So let me see if I can find it here. Give me 1 second. Here it is. Here it is. Right here. Bam. I believe this was a time. This is a Time Life magazine. There were at least 2 pictures. One just like this, and another one a little bit to the left. And I was going to try to photo merge those 2 together, but it didn't work out. So with the new update for Adobe Photoshop, I was able to colorize this sucker. So here we go. Before I did that, so I took that and I merged it with that and I aligned it perfectly, and then I colorized it, and this is the final result. Bam. I think that came out spectacular. Now, this is an 8 by 10. This is an 8 by 10. This actually gives this old photo here, it makes it look like it was like taken yesterday. Makes it feel like you were there, right?
And that's not enhanced. So it's not a false image. You've just enhanced what's already there and combined another photo with it, but it's still accurate to the actual shape
I
of the
aligned
craft.
the telephone. If you see that the cross telephone on the right, those wires there, along with the wires on the top, along with the water tank on the left and the heels, I aligned everything just perfectly. And this is an 8 by 10. I've already sent one off to the team. One, I just sent one to Rob, sent one to myself, and one to another person that will remain anonymous. But if you would like this photo that I did, and I did sign it on the bottom, how about it will be delivered to your house, $10. 100% of the profits go to the charity. How about that? If you're interested, all you have to do is contact me right here. I'm going to bring up my my email so everybody can see it. So right here. Oh, right there. Boom. On the bottom, shandyscott@yahoo.com. If you want this image, 8 by 10. This is in my opinion, it's one of the best images ever. Okay, let's go on to the next. I was inspired by what I just did. I said, man, that's good. I'll have to do that again. So I did it again. and I'll show you what I did here. How about this picture right here, right here, right here, right here. Bam. I forgot the guy's name. Holy smoke. Anybody in the chat? Let's see. Can you tell me anything about this photo? It's one of the most, and there's 3 photos that go with this, right? No, let me tell you why I really like this photo. There is like air being swished up from the ground. So there's actual an effect from this craft here. Let's see if you guys know our friend Terry owns that. Oh, he does? Maybe we need to go out there and check that place out. Or have a correspondent. Hey, Anonymous Rex, go ahead and if you ever go out there, we'll have you on location, a correspondent, okay? You have to have a microphone with military witness UAP. Okay, so yeah. This photo right here, and everybody knows he took this photo of the back of his vehicle, his truck, whatever it was, and he was using a Polaroid of some type, right? So I did my magic on this one too. Not only did I colorize it and then go in and after I colorized it, I had to do some corrections because the road was like red. I made it gray again, and the sky was yellow, and I had to make it blue. So one more thing I did. The metal frame, I took it away. I used the power of the that brush to fix things, and I made the whole freaking thing go away. So here is the image that I have completed. So tell me what you think. Bam. I think this came out really nice. This is a 5x7. Yeah, 5x7. This is also $10. I'm not going to do that many. 100%. Not going to do that many. Goes toward charity, and you never know. This will be a limited thing. So the old photos, they look new again. So there, I'm done peddling my stuff. To get back over here. So Andrew, tell us a little bit about you and how did you get to the point where you're right here on this show?
Well, I could bring you all the way back to middle school when I had a project on architecture, and my mom had to take me to the library to buy some books on architecture. And one of the books,
you had interest in it at a young age.
Yeah, and it was passing, right? It was just, yeah, architecture is cool and it's interesting. Well, I got this book when I was in middle school, and it has a picture of a nub in it. As a matter of fact, it's at the Parthenon in Rome, it's at the Acropolis in Greece. I mean, and I kind of filed that away, like, oh, that's a weird block, and just kind of put it in the back of my mind for years and years. And then I went to college, and I have an art background. I'm into art history. And that was kind of just spurred on by my abilities in art, my skills in art, mixed with, my interest in previous artists and where does art come from, and, the predecessors of my craft. Specifically for me, I was into printmaking because I thought it was really, the printing press, how amazing is that thing? And typesetting and just being able to mass produce images and words and doing it the old fashioned way. So I was really interested in that, and it was like a dying art. So I used my skills in art along with my interest in history to kind of further this path of academia towards art history. But in the process, I got tangled up in all this other ancient history mystery stuff that's kind of surrounding the topic. And after I left college, I had a completely different mindset than when I went in. I thought, maybe archaeology is for me. Maybe I'll go in and try to be an archaeologist. And I took a couple of archaeology courses. And the things that they were talking about weren't the topics that we talk about now. And there was really no interest by any of those professors to go into those topics. So it was just like, well, that's a dead end. I guess I can't pursue that avenue and get the enthusiasm from my peers and get the get the truth, because I got a sense in college. That was about the time I started watching Graham Hancock and reading his books, and then Brian Forrester and some of these other guys, and I was just starting to become aware that our history is not correct, that there are details even in mainstream archaeology that need to be addressed, and they don't seem to be addressed, swept under the rug or ignored. And I was like, well, what's all this drama about? Do I need to really vet all this out to find out where the truth is? And 5 years, 10 years later, here we are, and I feel like I've gotten myself to a sense of understanding, at least to a point of what our past is. But like Rob will tell you, any day we get a new bit of information that just throws us for a loop and puts us right back to square one again. So there's definitely some things I've been able to drop as far as my preconceived notions, things I've been taught that was propaganda, just through my own research into the subject and vetting out these researchers, like who's credible, who's a grifter, who's disinformation, who's a useful idiot, and just find out who the real researchers are, what the real research is, and what kind of data you can use. That was the most important part. It was like, do I trust mythology? Do I trust religion? Do I trust science? There's all these different pillars of academia that are willing to take in, my thoughts, but I wasn't getting any. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't satisfied with their with theology or science or mythology. I knew there was more to it. And then it was through that, looking through the ancient ruin sites, the photos of sites all around the world, what I consider our megalithic heritage, just everything that is megalithic stone around the world. And the megalithic heritage was telling me a different story. And I knew I could trust the stones. It's like in Conan the Barbarian, the father at the beginning says, you cannot trust no man, no woman, no beast. What in this world can you trust? And he points to his sword and he says, this you can trust. Well, for me, the stones were the sword. It was like, these I can trust. And I can see if they've been adulterated or molested or defaced. They can't hide the evidence that's written in stone. So it was from that literal foundation, a stone megalithic foundation, that I was able to build up my understanding of ancient history, our concepts of these different cultures, and kind of got me back into a religious mindset. Like Rob and I were talking earlier about just, where do you go in this field with just a scientific mindset, or how do you interpret this research with just a religious background? You kind of have to have both sides, weighed out. And if you're just coming into it with a religious aspect, you're gonna assume everything is divinity. And then if you come into it with a scientific background, you're gonna assume everything's a coincidence or Occam's razor, easily explainable. And we found things that just cannot be easily explained, and things that hint toward divinity, or that point towards some kind of divine power, something much greater than ourselves. So that kind of brought me back into religion a little bit. I was like, okay, there's a reason why all these religions persist around the world today. They've been going on for a long time. You cannot just write it all off as cargo cults, because they would have wised up to some of their cargo cult behaviors by now. It's the fact that they understand their traditions and they continue them faithfully because they know they're important. They know there's something to them. There's the way I say it is, the stones lend credence to their devotion. Yeah. And then from there, it's down the rabbit hole, guys. The past few years with you guys, we've been collating and collaborating and sharing research, and it's snowballed into where we are today. But it all started with just an honest, innocent curiosity in ancient history, ancient art, and ancient architecture. It's not as glamorous. I don't have that glamorous background like some do that got to go to these sites as a kid or had parents that were archaeologists or anything like that. I really didn't have any connections or background in this field before. It was just something that I kind of grew towards, or I was channeled towards.
And that might be to your advantage, that you didn't have preconceived, loaded implications with it, or that you have expectations placed on you by your parents or such to go into the field, but this is the narrative you have to focus on. If you don't, then we're gonna push back on you because that's not what the truth is. Empirically, you found what the truth was, that was objective, not subjective, because like you said, the stones don't lie, they are what they are. And with your college education in it, and combining the art and the art history, you're able to see, probably more discerning than a lot of people, to be able to understand what within a culture is consistent and what's an outlier and what doesn't fit. So that gives you a unique vantage point to start from. But like you said, this rabbit hole, I think it started for me a few years ago with Baalbek, well, more than a few, understanding the trilithon stones in Baalbek, each, the most heaviest one, 1,500 tons, not including the one in the quarry still. I've been pursuing physics all my adult life, specifically anti-gravity and things of that nature. And I saw that, these are 1,500 ton blocks on top of 400 ton blocks that are 40 feet in the air. There's no way in hell they could put those blocks up there like that, much less cut them to precision. Yeah.
The joinery is perfect. So it's not just the Herculean feat. It was the fact that they did it so precisely as well. I mean, the result is just out of this world.
And they withstood the test of time. The platforms and things have been restacked many times, but the Trilithon stones, no matter how many times they hit them with cannons and all that stuff, that's the bloodiest real estate on the planet, is Baalbek, second to the temple. Temple Mount is secondary to that.
Yes.
But there's been so many wars fought literally on those two locations and blown to hell, pulled down. They couldn't pull those stones down.
Yeah.
They're immovable.
I've got like a lot of historic photos from Baalbek, and I've got a photo that has a different army in it. So it's like there's like 4 or 5 different photos with a different army in the photo, but it's the same photo of the Temple of Jupiter. So it's just like, look at how many times it's changed hands, changed authority. And even today, we know that the quarry of Baalbek is private land, and some of the owners of that private land might not have the same political views as the people who own the temple proper. We don't necessarily know the dynamics of the politics within the countries to know, who has control of these sites and who's controlling the narrative of these sites.
Yeah, and it's very important to preserve them, but we've seen, like in Syria, where they've destroyed megalithic sites, or any cultural site that did not coincide with their radical faith. They destroyed, that they could destroy, but they couldn't destroy Baalbek. They couldn't destroy the Trilithons. Like Genghis Khan came tooling in there, pulled things down like Jerash, laid everything to waste, and they, nothing could take down that course of that wall of the Trilithon that surrounds the rest of the structures. Was it the I forget what the temple is there, but that was separate from the platform and the main temples that they built on the site.
Right. And we're kind of, all these sites we're talking about, they all exhibit this one type of block that we, terminology wise, is called a Herodian ashlar, from the king Herod. His style of block, allegedly. It's an ashlar block with a beveled edge around it. Now, we just call them beveled blocks because it rolls off the tongue better, and you don't have that bias of who made them. Because right. I've got an aqueduct in Iraq by Sennacherib with the same blocks. So are they Herod's blocks, or are they Sennacherib's blocks? Well, the wall, the Hadrian's Wall in England, that has some beveled blocks in it. So
Crimea's there was the atrium that has it, and Crimea's vault also has it.
There's a lot of places that share these blocks, but they've all got different people attributed to them. Trajan, Hadrian, Sennacherib, Saladin. I mean, there's just so many names applied to these blocks, and it's like, well, first of all, those rulers were not rolling up their sleeves and making these blocks on their own. There had to be a guild of masons doing this. And for some reason, all these Mason guilds are using the same like branded blocks or the same design blocks. And it's the territory, right? I mean, we're talking, from Ukraine all the way to England and Tunisia and North Africa. Like it's all over. I mean, you can even spot bevel blocks in Peru. They seem to try not to express bevel blocks in Peru, but in some areas like Huanuco Pampa and I think Tarawasi is another one. There's a few sites where they expressed bevel blocks, and it's like you gave it up, let the cat out of the bag, because now how are these supposed to be explained in the context of the old world blocks?
Yeah,
because that if you have that style in the New World, either the Spanish did that, or if the Spanish did not do that, then how do the Inca or the pre-Inca come up with the same style of block facing decoration or decorative?
Or to say that all pyramid building across all the continents was happenstance and accidental, because the natural progression of starting out from mud huts and all that progresses to building perfect pyramids. But they forget to tell people that the most perfect megalithic pyramids, like the ones in Egypt, were the first built, and then they got worse from there. There's only 7 megalithic pyramids in Egypt standing, and the Giza Plateau. The rest of them that were mud brick that came along later are crumbling and falling to pieces, and that's not how civilizations start out. That's how
a lot of those are built on top of megalithic foundations of older structures. The Lahun pyramid, for example, like you said, is just a giant pile of crumbling mud brick. You can barely tell it was a pyramid. It's just a pile of crap. But at the base, where the sand has started to wash away, the wind has blown the sand away. Very light colored limestone, megalithic, very worn blocks are underneath. And then, of course, if you go inside the burial chamber inside the Lahun pyramid, you're greeted with a granite chamber that is precision made, perfectly smooth, with a curved arch roof, not corbel or angular like the other Egyptian pyramids and tombs. This is a curved granite, curved arch entryway. The floor is not even level, but their megalithic box that they put in the room has been adjusted to compensate. So the box itself is level, even though the floor is not, and it's all granite. I mean, it's the precision, and then of course the fact that it's so well preserved there in the core, like that just gives you an idea of what maybe the entire structure looked like before on the outside. Right. Before the ravages of time, cataclysm, warfare, all these factors rendered them just a stump. And then the Egyptians recovered, reclaimed, and maybe revered and renovated these structures. They might not have all been usurping. They like in Peru, for example, we have lots of instances of the culture venerating and appreciating that previous construction and wanting to kind of consecrate it somehow. So, I mean, maybe in their own way, some of these Egyptian dynastic and later, they're consecrating. They're doing their best.
Just like Khufu and them wanted to attribute the pyramids to them, having identification with it, and like the boat pits where they buried their boats in front of it. There's never been a body found in any pyramid. It's a fallacy of trying to say that they're built for tombs. There aren't any bodies in any of those any of the pyramids whatsoever. There was no trace that there ever were. So, they wanted to venerate him, and they, Khufu had his family and stuff buried around it, and his boat buried, and what they say is a boat pit. But, like Christopher Dunn says, it may be a saw pit, a wet saw, of a giant blade that could cut on site.
Yeah, infrastructure point. I mean, you ask yourself when you look at the pyramids, you're like, okay, so this guy was so narcissistic that he wanted this giant mound built to basically venerate his genealogy, my family, and this is a monument to my family. But then you go inside of it, and there's not a single story about his family. There's not a depiction of him. There's no inscriptions or glyphs. You go inside that thing, and there's nothing venerative or votive, or that symbolism isn't there. That connection to a narcissistic ruler.
Yeah, it's not covered in hieroglyphics and graffiti, because they tagged everything that they touched. And it wasn't until, the 11th century that an earthquake loosened up a crack in the Great Pyramid enough to where they could start to get the casing stones off. Because before that, it was impenetrable.
You get the story of Al-Mamun and his breach into the pyramid.
Yeah.
I don't believe that, because you can't tell me they guessed and got it right like that.
No, they didn't.
No, they were inside the pyramid already. I think there was something in the pyramid they wanted to get out, and they couldn't take it down the well shaft, because the well shaft is a very tiny artery that runs from basically, it's literally well, half of it's masonry,
Yeah.
and then below that is just a bedrock carved chute that goes down to the subterranean. If there was a precious or delicate, fragile, big infrastructure, what have you, artifacts inside the pyramid, and you wanted them out, the only way to get them out, if you can't fit them out through the way that you came in, is to make a new exit. And
Make a new hole.
once you're inside and you know the layout, you know where to tunnel from.
Yeah,
And
and
it
we've
was
seen that there was a
inside-out.
definite hard place where they stopped all the megalithic construction and all the technology, the tools. There's not even a broken saw blade to indicate a power tool, but yet, me having a history in engineering and manufacturing and working with custom metal fabrications and hand tools, power saws, and table saws and things, I can easily spot how it was manufactured with what process, and seeing all the high precision, high speed saw marks, drill holes, and all that stuff. It was a no-brainer. Power tools were used, and some of them were fixed to be able to create 3D, supersymmetry, to where they're optically mirrored, precision, exact, proportions in 3 dimensions, 3D.
And you get an aspect of it might be handheld, or it might be the scale of it. It gets down to the point where it does look like it is a hand implement or a hand tool doing the job. So it's not all simulation aliens with lasers and everything. There's something to the mystery aspect, yes, but there's also a tangible, like a being was there and they did it on site. It was on the ground work done. However it was done, through whatever technology, we don't know, but at least we know somewhat of the context, that it wasn't created artificially, without any boots on the ground involved.
Yeah, there was mechanical labor that is exhibited within the works, and there's like LAH, the Russian team pulled metal samples out of 5 different saw cuts around the planet that gave the same exact alloys, advanced alloys, that indicated that they were the same tool saws that were employed, that were able to high heat metal that could still keep its integrity. So
that kind of cross-cultural research and cross-referencing other similar hallmarks. I mean, yes, the saw marks all kind of look the same around the world, but to take the next step and to actually do the mineralogy or the metallurgy of these aspects and compare them, and to categorically, without a doubt, say not only are they the same saw marks, but it's the same metal used. All that's
same alloy.
That, yeah, it no longer is coincidence at that point.
It's uniform.
You have a whole new paradigm you've entered into at that point.
And they were able to soften and re-solidify and at room temperatures, because in the Cairo Museum there's that sarcophagus with the partial lid that was sawn on its backside, and it had dual saw blade marks through it, and one of them broke, and there's an overcut of like 1.5 feet, 2 feet into it. But there's also a thumb, you can see and trace it with your finger on top of the block, or on top of the sarcophagus. Somebody took their finger and just made a path to saw along, and you can tell it was the width of a finger, an inch, so you can tell they did it at room temperature. It didn't burn their finger. They just kind of haphazardly drew a line through there. Okay, here's where we're gonna, they spitballed it. They sweat, of marking it, and then they ran the saw blades through, because once they put it in the apparatus that cuts it, it was precision. So their finger marking didn't have to be perfect, but the saw cuts were when they started the process. And when it broke, yes, jig. Thank you. But
maybe the jig slipped, right? Or the saw became...
The saw blade broke, and they showed where one of the 2 saw blades broke, and you don't get a overcut with a hand tool that's going to be 1.5 feet deep in basalt or granite. It doesn't happen like that.
That is an aspect that is beyond hand implements. Yes, you're looking at larger machinery at that point. Yes.
Yeah, and high speed. There's no other explanation for it. You unequivocally cannot say this was done with copper chisels and pounding stones. It doesn't fit.
No, you gotta look at the mineralogy. Then you have to look at your materials that you're cutting with, and then just do the math. The depth cut, like Dan Stevens will say about the drill hole, the core drills, right? It's about the material that you're cutting, the diameter. So you think a larger diameter core drill, that's a lot more rotation, more material you're having to cut versus a smaller drill hole, right? It's about the material, the travel of the saw, and the amount that it cuts.
Like Flinder's Petrie Core Drill 7, it's got helical marks on it that indicate that it was cut with a single tip and with a power machine that had to have at least 5 tons of force, I think, and at least 5,000 RPM to have a feet cut rate that it did, and that uniform.
Right. Yeah. Like in screw nuts and bolts, it's TPI, threads per inch, right? So you're looking at these grooves like threads in a screw. So it's like the threads per inch.
And they're uniform. They're like 1 millimeter each, and there's, and it's helical. They'll tilt it down like you would see, and with a feed rate going down, they can calculate the feed rate, the amount of pressure, and how sharp it had to be to cut it that way.
You got it. Right. And then, but then above and beyond those kind of things, you also have that stone manipulation softening aspect, like with the unfinished sarcophagus you were talking about, with the lid broke off. Dan Stevens has photos from the inside, and there's a nub on the inside. It's a little shallow square nub on the inside of this basin, this coffer. So it's like, well, what's that about? We also have a photo from another coffer in Turkey that has a couple of nubs on the inside of it. So that rules out any lifting bosses or anything like that.
And we have nubs on cliff faces where they are quarried block and stuff from that are still on the cliff face, that you're not moving a mountain with it.
And it's not concrete. You didn't apply concrete to a mountainside. That is it is what it is. The biology is what it is. So it's not that it's cast like concrete. There could have been some kind of casting, but it's not the casting that we today think
some about. Of it could have been geopolymers in some instances. That is true, but that is not the entire explanation, nor is it the majority of explanations for what we've observed.
Insufficient, right? Yeah, I mean it's entertainable for certain blocks and certain structures, but no, we do have bedrock examples. The Aswan Quarry, we have melted and pooled granite. I mean, it's right there. It shows the angle of repose. It's an LAH photo. I can show you all. It's the side of the obelisk where it does look like someone of about our stature stood with some kind of implement that was potentially handheld and worked this surface. And you can see the little square patches of, the sections that they've worked. And at the bottom, at the base of it, there is a pile of pooled granite. How does that happen? How are you transmuting this substance and like you said, maybe even at room temperature? So who knows?
Well, we have examples like that handprint in Wyoming that shows, that's like 6 inches deep into the sandstone. That's the impression of a hand, but there are like dozens of fingerprints that are drawn like finger paint in that sandstone block that still it's not liberated. It's in a bluff face, and they have drawn. It's like somebody came along, softened the stone up to show the locals what they could do, and then there's small children handprints in it and fingerprints and things. And there's also one in that like 600 yard or 600 foot stone. I think it's in Guatemala or something. That there's all those stone prints in through it.
The Inga stone, right? Is that one you're thinking of?
Yes, that one had where somebody took their fingers and they did that pattern like this with it.
Very much like finger
blooming out. The room temperature.
Yeah, it looks so cartoony or childlike in terms of its application, but it's in stone. It's like finger painting on stone. Yeah, with stone.
Yeah. So it indicates that it had to be a ambient temperature, at least cool enough that it didn't burn the flesh, because there are children's fingerprints in those and handprints that would obviously, if there was molten or something, and you're not gonna have molten sandstone.
No,
so they were able to.
I agree. That would imply, if there wasn't any child handprints, it would imply maybe a test of courage, a test of strength, right? If it hurts. Yeah. But no, if they're letting their kids do it, then maybe it's just, hey, come see that we're right. We want to prove to you that we have some kind of divinity, or that we have some kind of special powers. Bring the kids. Let the kids try.
Like somebody was passing through and maybe not have been, the locals may have had stranger danger on their mind. And, it's like somebody in the jungle with native, that's never been seen a modern human with a lighter. It's like, hey, watch this. I can do magic. I'm a god. You know,
Exactly. That's what I was thinking of too.
They demonstrate their powers, and everybody's like, "Whoa!" You know, and in worship. And he didn't get his head removed and eaten by cannibals or something. You know,
right? They didn't chase him out of the territory.
Mm-hmm. And that's what that other stone in the riverbed in South America indicated to me also. It looks like an entire community went through and finger painted that thing, literally. Because there are hundreds and hundreds of little thumbprints all through that and finger marks where they've gone through and taken. One of them I remember really extremely well. They took 4 fingers and then did this with it.
Yeah, like a fanning. I know exactly what you're talking about. It looks like a blooming flower or something, right? A proclamation of flower blooming.
With fingers.
And
then there's a whole line of thumbprints all the way down through there, just, you know, tens and tens of yards.
And you can find parallels in those markings with glyphs in other cultures. The dais symbol, which is a circle with a vertical line bisecting through it. It's also the symbol for pi, phi. So the golden ratio symbol. So this dais symbol is in Phrygian logograms over in Turkey. And then you look at the Inga stone and it's got this same dais symbol. And then there's other cultures with this same mirroring dais symbol. And I would love to have somebody that knows more about glyphs than I do interpret the glyphs on the Inga stone cross-culturally. See if there's any other cultural distinctions or parallels in those glyphs, because they do look very alien and wild. I mean, they don't really make much sense in terms of a narrative. Like there's like patterns of thumbprints, spirals, abstract glyphs. It doesn't really make much sense in terms of like a narrative by itself. But if you use that as some kind of chart and compared it to other glyphs from other cultures, I bet you would find some parallels.
There are some aspects of it, I think, that were intentional designs, but the rest of it, it seemed like a free for all of it. Like, hey, let's have some fun, you know, because not everything in antiquity has to been a purpose, you know, specifically. You know, why couldn't they be prone to allowing to entertain themselves, you know, to have a little fun with it?
That with the childlike kind of 3D relief carvings of the towers and the Huanuco Pampa area. It's like there was a duality of this precision, important, serious work, but then also there was some levity to it, right? There was a little bit of let's put it
humanity injected into it.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
You know, it's like smoking a peace pipe or something. That's kind of what I akin it to in those 2 locations that, you know, in Wyoming and in South America like that. It showed to me something positive and fun, you know, which you very rarely see in anything in antiquity, and especially in Megalithic.
Winnemucca. Do you know Winnemucca? That's in northwest. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly where, but the Winnemucca glyphs almost mirror exactly those Inga stone glyphs down in South America. Again, the same kind of process of application of stone softening or whatever. It looks, I mean, the glyphs aren't the same. There's variation, but then there is also the parallels of like the rows of thumbprints and the clusters of round indentations.
And that could have been some kind of ritualistic, you know, putting your thumb there to, you know, like you're putting your X on the spot when you can't write your name. Who knows?
It could have been a roll call, a head count of who all's in the tribe, you know?
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
To memorialize themselves. Hey, you know, you want to live forever? Put your hand on here. You know, leave your thumbprint. So,
and then that calls into question some of these other scoop marks and things in other areas. You know, Egyptian temples have scoop marks and scrape marks all over them. Well, you're thinking about them through the terms or through the lens of pilgrims scraping off bits for magic, you know, therapeutic tinctures, or soldiers sharpening their spears to make these. Well, if you look at the Inga stone and see what's possible in terms of glyph representation, then you look back at those Egyptian temples, you might reconsider. You might want to look at those in a different light, just by, you know, the fact that they look like a spot where something was rubbed and sharpened doesn't necessarily mean that's what it was.
Yeah, because we found some and the pinch holes that like 40 feet up. You're not gonna make a hole up there to tie your camel up, because that wasn't what they were doing.
A lot of these sites, that wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to just bring in your livestock and tie them up. Like there was none of that. If anything, they were used for tying up banners and tapestries, or for hanging votive items from lanterns or lamps, you know, pendants.
We've seen, like with that tallest statue in I think Afghanistan or Pakistan, where they blew part of it out. What we thought was one piece, but there's rectangular holes where it looks like part of it was modular. And I've seen that on some of the door jams in like Petra that the facade is blown away and there's these mounting block holes around it that
I know exactly.
It was filled in. Did we lose Shannon?
We might have.
I'm not sure where you may have took a powder, man. Sound off, bro.
I got a private chat. It says, it says top secrets. I don't know if I should read it out, but it's over there on the right in the
look.
StreamYard stream.
Yeah, I see that. Huh. Amazing.
Well, hey.
If you wanna talk for a second, I'll give him a ring and mute my mic.
That'd be fine. Can I share the screen? I would love to show some photos.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do that.
Here. I don't know how to facilitate it, but
I will try here. Let's see. Entire screen. I don't need my audio system, thank you. Okay, can you guys see what I'm seeing? No. Oh, I got the, there you are. Can you see it now? Can you see my desktop background? No? All right. Well, then maybe we won't be able to do that. I will pause.
Seeing it. I saw
couldn't
that.
Get it. I mean, I could get that infinite regression, but I couldn't get the my desktop to show up. So
I saw the first one before you went infinity, but
okay, because when I minimize this, I can no longer get any feedback from you guys.
Okay, don't worry about it. But kind of explain the iconography of the nubs and stuff, and the pinch marks, and how all that kind of ties in. That there's one global, one cast of builders that left that use a hallmark where they're. It shows some of the fundamental basic processes that was throughout the entire ancient world that went at a time that they weren't supposed to be intermingling with each other, or even be aware of the existence of other continents.
Yes, agreed. And that's, I mean, you can go to my channel, Ancient History Criticisms, and the most recent video I have on micro blocks and filler stones, that's just one aspect. Like that's one hallmark. We have videos on other hallmarks, like Rob is saying, these pinch holes or nubs on blocks. People are probably more familiar with nubs than they are with these other aspects, but it's all related. It's all a tapestry of evidence. So what we've tried to do, myself, Phil from the Ancient Alternative View, Ziggy Dan, we've been making these videos, collaborative and standalone videos, where we're just trying to show you all the hallmarks as they are exhibited on the sites. You know, we don't want to give you any kind of bias in terms of construction dates, attributions, or anything like that. We just want to show you, look at this masonry versus look at this other masonry, and you guys decide for yourself if there's a strong connection and if the narrative is incomplete or totally false. For example, you know all about the pyramids at Giza, for example, the Great Pyramids. Do you know that all three pyramids have nubs? You know, you might know, okay, the Menkaure pyramid, I've seen the casing stones on the Menkaure pyramid, so I know that one has nubs. Well, on the Khafre pyramid that is otherwise smooth, you go down to the bottom, you will find some nubs. You go inside the Great Pyramid, you will find one nub. So there is a connection just through nubs all across all three Great Pyramids, which are, you're supposed to believe, are three different dynasties. So either all three dynasties have this same tech, this same symbolism, and even then that's not enough. You have to take that further because it's cross-cultural. That means that not only were these dynasties using this tech and this symbolism, but so were the dynasties in Peru. So were the rulers in Turkey. So were the rulers in India. You know, you can't just simplify it by it's one culture.
Yeah. What we found is that when I got into this with you guys, it's one of my first questions was, how are they dating these sites? And you would think that they went through and took carbon 14, which you can't carbon 14 stone, by the way. You know, they find foliage under them or between them. Well, there's no in between them because they were perfectly aligned, and you still can't get a sheet of paper between most of them unless an earthquake's moved them. But most of them are only secondarily dated by figuring out what culture best fits in the history of that location that we can attribute it to, that best fits our ideology, like Egypt and things. And then we'll just assign it an arbitrary construction. Or what I found just recently, they made up complete cultures, like the Beaker culture. They're like, they don't really exist. What is a Beaker culture? They don't know. It was just something they poof out of thin air, but they kind of look all the same in this area. So we're going to make up a name, and we're going to sound like we know what we're talking about with no fact, and attribute a date and a culture to it. And they have absolutely zero evidence to corroborate it.
Yep. We get the same thing here in North America with the mound builders, right? The mound builders are lumped in with other tribes.
Yep. I will have to order some of these.
We got you.
You get better.
We can hear you, Shannon.
And tell Lou to take a deep breath once in a while. It's okay.
Hey guys.
Yeah, I will. It wasn't a real great night tonight, so you just. I'm sorry.
Ellie McGinnis. You say everyone.
I told him when things get rough, just know you got family and you got friends.
Yeah, Julie, the mound builders, right? The Adina, the Hopewell.
We're going to have challenging times ahead. No matter how bad it gets, it can always get worse. So there you go.
Well, listen, keep us posted about December, because if you guys have we might be able to take a drive down and say hi or something. If you guys are somewhere in civilization, I don't know.
I don't know either. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, you guys figure it out. Well, listen, take care. Say hi to Rob, and
I sure will.
And yes, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you soon. Keep me posted on your treadmill.
I sure will. Oh, I'm going to look at it this way. If Shannon has, if he's been denied lung transplant because he wouldn't survive it, and if I can do that amount, you sure better at least match me, okay? So that.
Okay. I miss the walking. It's so
You're live, Shannon.
Once it starts hitting like 10 degrees or 10 below, I don't feel like
I think
walking.
he knows.
You're kind of like housebound. That's the problem. So in the summer and the fall, I try to walk a lot because I love it. But in the dead of winter here, it's not real suitable for it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear?
He does.
Yeah.
But that's what really ticked me off.
Sorry
when I came in.
That's fine.
Go ahead.
Welcome back.
All right, I can't hear you. Good night, babe. I am so sorry. I did not have you guys on mute.
That's fine.
But I'll tell you about this later, Rob. But it was great. What did I miss, guys? Can you go back over everything you just said, Andrew?
Yeah, we'll just pick it up where we left off.
Well,
the dating really.
Right, dating.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's just that, there's preconceived notions about which cultures built what, and other cultures are ignored or lumped into these other preconceived cultures. And we were talking about North America with the mound builders. You have Cahokia, which is in Illinois, and it has as much material in terms of mass as the Great Pyramid. It's just dirt and not stone. I mean, it's a huge mound, the biggest mound in America. And
Watson Break, I think, goes back to 11,000 years.
Right, and then you get beyond the known Native American tribes to a point where you get to hear these other tribes like the Adina people or the Hopewell people, and these are kind of like these vague terms for these larger predecessor groups, but we really don't have much information other than maybe some artifacts, right? We do have some artifacts, but the artifacts we do find are very curious. Like you'll find bronze plates of like hands, but that hand symbolism is an Indian symbolism. Dave Hanrahan would be better for this, but he knows that like the ancient Native American artifacts have a completely different story to tell than what mainstream academia will say. And then like in the chat about the even the Clovis spear points, the Clovis culture, they're called that because they're spear points. Well, there's also Salutrian points, which was found in France over here in America. So you've got a connection there. You have to contextualize. When did they come?
And they tried to say with the black mat layer that was at the end of the Younger Dryas. I think, I can't remember which one it was now, either 12,800 years ago or 11,600 years ago. One of the two impactors completely flash incinerated the entire continent of the Americas, clear down to halfway into Peru and most of Northwest Europe, where it burnt everything that was everything that couldn't take cover that was, say, over 100 pounds was incinerated. Entire forests were burnt to the ground, gone, and left the black mat layer. So in the United States, and they said, if you get to the black mat layer, don't dig any further. There's nothing there under it, because prior to 11,600 years ago, there wasn't any inhabitants of the Americas.
They've hedged their bets, right? They know, they give you a line, don't go under this line, when really that's where maybe all the good stuff is, right? And weren't these Salutrian spear points, weren't they found below the black mat layer, and that's what caused all this controversy in the first place?
They found, and that was one of the things Chuck CFFs was working on with me a little bit before he died. That we had found one of those real long spear points at that copper mine in North America, and I'd found in northwest Europe that they had found 25,000-year-old spear point that was the exact same as that one. So we were tying it back to that culture that far, because he was really looking into trying to find more additional data for that he was going to do a big another episode among his volumes. But unfortunately, they never got around to it. That they went back from those spear points way before the 12,800 Younger Dryas period that put us back into the Ice Age for 1,200 years. So, and the copper mine, I think, was 10,000 years old. And then they have the dig in California. One of them is 26,000 years, and I think another one is 130,000 years that they found mastodon bones with tool marks on it, where people extracted the marrow. So,
that might be something to talk to George Howard about, right? Since he has his cosmic tusk with his impactors in the tusk. That kind of data, right?
That particular tusk, it's 36,000 years old, and the iron from the meteorite is on the top side, so it was killed by an airburst of meteorite fragments. So that's exactly what happened to that one. And,
I got a question here I got a question here by Anonymous Rex, just asking, are we seeing any real evidence of the Aztecs reaching as far as Utah, like northerly? Well, I mean, you would have to look at the different tribes in that area and look at their artifacts and like their textiles, things like that, see if there's any parallel. Because now when we talk about the Aztecs, that's a specific group of maybe primitive or not advanced peoples. But then if you go up into the Utah area, well, we have Mike from Wandering Wolf that was just up there recently looking at some of these,
Chaco Canyon,
natural looking outcrops and things that are not very natural. Some of them have nubs on them. Mike from Wandering Wolf found some nubs on some of these outcrops. And it's like, well, there may have been some group that came up that was advanced, and then there could have been, a group that followed behind them that was like a cargo cult,
Yeah,
and
that was the first confirmation of a megalithic ruin north of Mexico City ever,
right?
That could be confirmed that he did. Wandering Wolf.
We do not have a much megalithic heritage in North America. We don't have megalithic standing stones. There might be a few dolmens, maybe questionable dolmens, but they're over in like Virginia. But as far as the plethora of stone circles, the megalithic sites that we have everywhere else in the world, for some reason, North America is kind of devoid of these sites. But we do have other kinds of sites. We have the mounds, which are their own mystery.
They're after the Younger Dryas floods, and I think part of the reason we're devoid of megalithic structures in North America is because our mountain range runs north and south, and in Europe that protected the Mediterranean, they had they run east and west. So they had the Swiss Alps, the Himalayas, and all that stuff protecting everything below it.
Oh yeah,
So
especially the
tidals, floods, and everything that came off the glaciers that melted. You know, there was a drainage basin. The Mississippi Basin was running from Little Rock to Memphis at over 1,000 feet deep. So where I'm sitting here now, when that flood was occurring, it was 400 feet deep here.
That's
draining
wild.
off. So some of that was scattered 200 feet into the basalt bedrock. So anything that was megalithic prior to that flood was washed out into the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Gulf of Mexico, all gone.
Yeah,
and this one, like Chaco Canyon, some of the cliff dwellings, if they date back that far, they were isolated to where they didn't get caught up in that flood plain. And this space and that Wandering Wolf found, it was where the there was 2 separate glaciers, and then there was that path down through them from Alaska through Canada. It was in that sweet spot where it wasn't covered with the glaciers on that location. I went and looked. So it wasn't glaciated during the Ice Age. That to me told me unequivocally it was Ice Age. It was built there during the Ice Age, not after. But why they didn't, like in India, it seems to be the last iteration of megalithics that were built before it seems to have all stopped at 3200 BC. Why didn't they build back after the Younger Dryas in the United States? It's like it was a nature preserve or something.
Yeah, left alone.
Really it's like it was
be a garden or like a nature preserve.
It was erased out of the consciousness of most humans that were in Europe and things, and the maps and all that were just it shows where the Vikings came over in 1200, and there are some Native American lodge houses on the West Coast that were made from canoes and things that came over in like 800 AD and things. So there are many incursions, but the Bering Strait is out the window.
Oh yeah, you have to reconsider the populating of America in terms of what we have, boots on the ground artifacts and evidence. I mean, the stone anchors that it's a Chinese thing, and these stone anchors are off the coast of California. It's like, well, okay, there's your Pacific travel.
Chinese junks. Yep.
Then you have your Solutrean points from France, so there's your Eastern travel. I mean, you've got right there 2 conflicting narratives that are on top of the mainstream narrative.
Multiple incursions and episodes of visiting at least. But Eli was asking if that's where the nanodiamonds. Yeah, nanodiamonds, microspherules, all that came from the impactors during Younger Dryas that did all that.
Yeah, and the nuclear glass in Egypt and things
melt
like
glass,
that. Melt glass, right.
Multiple. And I think that's what ended the Roman Empire was at 536 AD was another airburst over England and parts of Central Europe and the Mediterranean that incinerated, another airburst. And the Cosmic Dust website on that, where he archives all these different impactors, and Randall Carlson, we've been hit by like 500 impactors in the last 12,000 years or so, easily, that have wiped out different places at different times, like at Sodom and Gomorrah at the north end of the Dead Sea. It wasn't the Dead Sea and highly salinated prior to the impact that they proven was an airburst that had sulfur balls with such a high magnesium content that is not found naturally anywhere else on the planet. There are no sulfur balls anywhere else on the planet that they're still pulling out of the ground.
And light them on fire right there.
Yeah, they're highly flammable.
Yes.
It's like thermite, but it completely incinerated. And I went and looked at this the other night. This was incredible. It was so hot, so fast. At El Hammam, and that is, by the way, the most read scientific paper ever on that excavation. One of the locations was so hot, so fast that it melted whatever was there, like the buildings, the people, everything, and then it solidified. It cooled back down so fast, but it melted it according to its atomic structure and sorted out. So the heaviest elements are on bottom, and each layer is like reading the periodic table from the heaviest to the lightest. Wow. And it didn't even have time to collapse before it stratified according to atomic weight and re-solidified. It's like a cooling came down after the initial blast and completely blew it out before it could collapse. And there's no other place on the planet that has those characteristics. It's a one-off. So,
yeah,
and
I mean, there are other sites though that also have these one-off phenomenon that are curious, like we were talking about Mohenjo-Daro and these the irradiated corpses or the remains and the way that they look flattened, and it's like, well, something very major must have happened at Mohenjo-Daro, and then
they're laying in the street irradiated. Shannon saying hello. Where'd you go, bro?
Dude, I had a top secret phone call from somebody that we actually know, and
cool.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's casual.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Yeah, that airburst, they weren't able to re-inhabit that for over 700 years, and they say that it brought the impactor brought the salt with it too, and completely the brine was in that. It must have been a comet fragment because it dumped the salt that made it a Dead Sea. So, that was a very bad day for the Levant period area.
For that area, right? Yeah.
And how convenient is like at 7,000 BC that they had the 7 flaming mountains that are told about in a lot of mythologies that happened to coincide with hitting 7 different locations on the planet that had the highest population densities at the time. You want to call that an accident?
Yeah, coincidence? No, right?
No, it's just like, we're gonna hit the reset button on humanity here. Duck and cover.
Yeah,
there it is.
I mean, that calls into question, were there morals in line, or was there a contract that they broke, or what was the ramifications for this? Something triggered this, and it was probably their behavior or something to do with their behavior. That's the biblical story.
Well, it's also, biblical, but it's also in the Vedics. It's in the Zoroaster. It's in the Sumerian. All of them talk about this. Mithraism. They all have these ancient accounts of there being an evil. That humanity was corrupted, and that there was vengeance of the gods to reset them and decimate most all of them from the planet. And a few were helped to survive it. And we get places like Derinkuyu in Turkey that are seven levels deep that can house up to 20,000 people long term, along with their cattle. They had freshwater wells, air shafts, granaries. And wasn't it funny that they started domesticating cattle and grains about 1,000 years before the impact hit, according to Göbekli Tepe? Coincidence from a hunter-gatherer? Probably not. And Göbekli Tepe seemed to be the dying of a prior age, not the beginning of a new one. Like mainstream tries to say.
First of all, we've only excavated a fraction of Göbekli Tepe. So what we have is not nearly the full extent of what is there. But what we have there, I have been able to show that one of the pillars at least has pinch holes on it. Well, we have sites in Peru, we have Cappadocia, we have Egypt, we have all kinds of places with pinch holes. So all of a sudden, Göbekli Tepe is not this isolated beginning. It's included in these other tapestry of sites just by their hallmarks. And I would love for them to keep digging, because I know they're going to find a nubbed stone there, or a beveled stone, or some other hallmark that'll be recognizable to us. And maybe that's why they're not excavating anymore.
Maybe, and it's not the only mound that is a sacred mound in the area, the pot-bellied hills. Yeah, they found several. There's like 12 different. There's at least 12 different sites in that local proximity, besides Göbekli Tepe, that also have these giant pillars in them. And then you have permanent residencies that were nearby of Catahoyuk that show that they go back to almost that same age. And Jericho wall, the oldest walls. The only thing predating Jericho and it was man-made that they can prove was Göbekli Tepe, and maybe by 1,000 years or less. But if you count Gedong Padang, then you can go back to the deepest layers, and that goes back to 26,000 years ago.
Yeah, Gunung Padang is that columnar basalt that is like Lincoln logs made of stone, stacked up into a pyramid at Java, right? And they bored down into the center of it because they wanted to find out how old it was. I haven't heard much more.
25 to 36,000 years.
I think when they found that out, all work on the site stopped, and that was about it.
Came to a screeching halt. They didn't want to go deeper. And it's like Dwarka. They thought that was a mythological city too, until they found it offshore, the western side of India, where it was supposed to be before the war among the gods. And now there's nothing there because it sank into the ocean, just like the legends state. And they found it, and they started to excavate it. And then the government came in for whatever reason and said, okay, we're not going to touch it. It's a protected site now. And until we can excavate it with to do it meticulously and correct and have the full resources and equipment and technologies to do it with, we're not going to touch it. It's preserved. So they are not.
See, they say that, but then every day the waves are still pounding against those ruins, right? Every storm washes up more artifacts on South India's shores. So it's like the longer you wait, the less you're going to have. So are they really waiting for the best time, or are they dragging their feet on purpose?
Or are they doing it under the cover of darkness, and their divers are going in, with their ships out there fishing, so to speak, and excavating it, but off the radar? Kind of like that one unopened door at that one temple in India that they've already pulled trillions out of water. But this one door is supposed to have even more treasure into it. But they found out that people had been tunneling under it and taking things out of it, looting it. But it still holds, untold billions of dollars worth of jewels, gold. Just goes back through the whole ages that
it is an
don't
interesting
fit
story.
the narrative. There's only supposed to. Yeah, it's an incredible story.
The locked gate. I mean, and then also the stories of stuff under the Taj Mahal. The Taj Mahal is a beautiful white stone structure, but if you look underneath it, there's a giant red stone structure built first. And it's got layers to it. There are underground chambers. And if you go to the riverside, you can see entrances into this underground aspect of Taj Mahal, which is completely off limits. So it's like, what's under there? I want to know. And these off limits areas and these otherwise famous sites. Petra is another good one. In Petra, Jordan, everyone's seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. They've seen the temple or the Valley of the Crescent Moon, right? And they've seen the treasury and how famous that is. No one knows that there's
site
to that. There's a chain
site. It's thought to have underground dwellings long term. KB5 in Egypt, they say are tombs, but KB5 they found out has those labyrinths under it and these huge chambers that also could have been used for long term occupation to take shelter in. And you have the same thing at a Kailash temple. That they have ventilation shafts, so they in 14 different complexes there, and they blocked them off and gated them, so the public can't get in there. Because once they got on the radar of saying, "Hey, we want to come here and look at where the UFOs or ancient advanced technologies, prey being put it on the map," so everybody kept showing up saying, "Hey, we want to see the proof that this wasn't built by monks that were bored in the wintertime."
Right?
They couldn't. When you have it's 12 inches square and it goes back 200 feet. You didn't dig it out with a pick. I'm sorry, but no.
You didn't send a kid
there's
in
no
there
explanation
to do that.
for it.
There you go. So that everybody knows. But if you see an overhead shot, you'll notice that there is a descending staircase with a chain link fence thrown over it, and it goes down into subterranean chambers where they could have had water basins, like you say, Rob, long-term habitations. Protected, like maybe the facade was just for show, but the real inner workings was underground. And
you can see the rectangular holes where it looked like part of the facade pulled off on either side, and it's like that in Peru at Amaramuru too. It has a frame around it, imprint, but it's a little rough. It's like something got pulled off the face of it that was ornamental.
Yes, Saudi Arabia has something the exact same way, right? These like they look like marshmallow. And then they were pressed in, right? Yeah, or pieces plucked out of soft marshmallow. That's what you see in Peru with some of these quarries like Ollantaytambo, things like that.
Yeah. So imagine everybody that comes into this field of ancient, what they call alternative, which when the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis first hit the scene with Firestone in 2007, it was considered fringe pseudoscience. And now it's the accepted, it's not just theory, it's proven fact now. So, we've been fighting an uphill battle. And that's what some people in this community don't understand of the UFO community. they think I'm being a jackass or rude when I ask for proof of things and not just take somebody's word for it. Well, I cut my teeth with you guys on pushing back against mainstream, professors and all kinds of people that they required proof.
Yeah, same scenario.
And like with Chuck, he would even, you could be his best friend, but if you put something out there he didn't think was accurate, he'd call you in a heartbeat and say, bullshit, show me the work.
Yeah, he'd say, what is this crap? Why don't you debate me live if you think this is really what it is?
Show me the evidence. It's a great story, but can you back it up? Because it doesn't sound true to me. So yeah, we got in the habit of, if we're going to advance it as fact, we already know in advance to have the link waiting and available, and just go ahead and supply it when you put it out there, because it's going to be asked. You might as well just put it in there up front to begin with, and
it will be brought
just
up.
Drop that. Yeah, because it just, so in this UFO community, I've tried to encourage people to do their own research. Don't take my word for it. Don't take anybody's word for it. Do your due diligence and fact check me. Go back to independent, verifiable sources, and if possible, go back to the first source of material and information and verify for yourselves that it's true, and make your own assumptions from there, and see what you can come with, and if it matches.
Is the exact same situation in the ancient history camp. It's like, who are you getting your information from? What is your baseline of knowledge to begin with? And then how are you contextualizing what you're hearing, what you're researching? If you don't have the groundwork in these ancient sites, like I said, you have to be able to name these ancient sites. How many can you name, and how many details of these sites can you tell me about? I'd like anybody to tell me if they know more than 20 ancient sites by name, and if they can locate those ancient sites on the map, and then tell me without Googling what kind of masonry it has, what kind of architectural features it has.
I'm out.
Most people are, Shannon, and that's what you realize really quickly, is that a lot of people are dealing with an incomplete deck of cards when they're talking about ancient history. They've got the ancient aliens psyop in their head, or they've got the mainstream psyop in their head, from what their professors and their teachers have taught them, or they just don't have any framework at all. And most people just don't have any framework at all. They know the pretty tourist destinations. Some people like Greece for the pretty ruined aesthetic. Some people like the Peruvian stuff because it's it's got that shamanic, mysterious aspect to it, very unadorned and very stark and very stoic.
The first thing they do, and when you go into Egypt to tour around, is that they make you sit down and are forced to watch their propaganda films and their narrative and their dogma, and then you can go out and take a tour. But you have to sit through their version.
You have to pound a stone with a stone pounder at the Aswan Quarry before they'll let you go look at the unfinished obelisk. But they won't tell you that there's one of these stone pounders embedded in the granite right there. So you're telling me that they were pounding on granite with these pounders, and then what? One guy pounded real hard and like sword in the stone, stuck his pounder halfway into the granite, and it got stuck. No. What those pounders are, I call them macrospherals. We know what microspherals are, right? I think these are macrospherals. And there are other channels who have brought up this point that it's mineralogy. These are, I forget.
If they can soften stone, and there are symmetrical scoop marks all the way down that unfinished obelisk that's unliberated, and you can tell by what shape of the machinery bucket was that was scooping it out at the time. And if it was temporarily softened to do that, if it were hit, like what you said, with a macrospheral, it would embed itself on impact while it was still soft, and then it re-solidified.
Or even if they were intrinsic to the granite itself, if they were already in there, the tech could have been plucking these things out like impurities, like spitting the seeds out. If they were just natural inclusions, which they could be, you wanted a homogeneous granite finished object. Well, you got to get the impurities out, and maybe just these piles of pounder stones are the spoil. It's the slag.
You made a good point. With a hand chisel, you're chiseling on something with inclusions in it, like a crystal quartz embedded in the sandstone or limestone. You're going to pluck it out when you're chiseling on it, but they are cut to where the hard basalt and all that are in limestone and all that, they are sawed through. They are cut. They are not plucked. They are flush planed. They weren't pulled out, and you can't do that with hand tools.
No, there's too many different weird anomalies in these stones. There's a few sites in Peru. One of them I know is a quarry outside of Sacsayhuaman, and I mean there's so many of these. It could be any one of them, right? There's so many of these unnamed quarries, but you pour water on the stone, and it reveals glyphs in the bedrock. You know, these are crystalline infused glyphs into the bedrock. They wrote however they created these glyphs, they embedded quartz into an otherwise dark stone. So you have these light patches that are they're written out like text.
That's one I haven't seen yet.
Oh, yeah. That's one that Sherman Osborne likes to talk about. But it's one of those things that you only reveal it when you pour water over it. So you'd almost have to go out into these quarries right after it rained and look around for all this evidence. Mm-hmm. And it just goes to show that they were
Jacques Vallée.
Go ahead.
Jacques Vallée lays out a very good historical case on UFOs and how they they go back to like 1400 BC. He had to keep it as believable as possible, and he in his books he does an excellent job giving a rudimentary course on a few sites and a few sightings. Not jump the shark with it, and it goes way back past. There's a petroglyph 40,000 years old that could be interpreted as an alien. It's like 40 feet, bulbous head. And it shows people at its feet warring with it. That wasn't from around here. Yeah, right? That's the one you and I keep talking about. And I showed Shannon that too. And he's like, "Yeah, we don't." It is. Yeah, that doesn't even. Our ancient, civilizations were used to whatever is local to this environment of Paleo-contact. So they didn't carve it out on the walls what they saw every day that interacted with them, whether they're sky brothers or whatever. But these outliers like that you see with these aura heads and look like they're wearing helmets, or this this real tall freaky looking monster is the best way to describe it. They were outliers, so that they wanted to record for posterity, because they didn't have written languages. Hey kids, if you ever see this, run like hell.
I mean there's more than
they were archiving it.
Yeah. No, there's more than one example, but there's ones in the Sahara. They're just wild. I mean,
Eastern Desert, Western Desert. Yeah.
Well,
the Cave of the Swimmers, the Cave of the Beasts.
Cave of the Swimmers, Cave of the Beast, yes. And then in Egypt as well, you have some of the Naqada period pottery that shows what looks like ant people. Then you go into the Hopi creation stories, and they talk about ant people. And over there in the Southwest, you will see these glyphs again of weird beings. They look like buildings. They look like a skyscraper with a head on them. Like they're just really very enigmatic. And it's like, what are you trying to say in terms of the details? Is it their textiles? Is it their garb? Are these patterns that represent their clothing, or is there something else going on? Do they even represent regular?
Well, you've got the degree in cultural history of art. I mean, when they go back that far in antiquity, they were utilitarian. They were portraying what they saw. Like when they're doing a cave drawing, they'll write out, okay, here's how here's the herd. You're gonna come around this way, and they draw out what they're gonna do. There's a function to it. Not a decoration of, hey, look at the color. Picture I drew today in school. There was a reason that they did this stuff, and it could, and a lot of it is DMT type shamanistic. What they saw in when they were tripping, they etched it out, and the people that have done DMT or in ayahuasca or enough psilocybin or whatever, the people that have used that drug recognize a lot of the petroglyphs and things of that nature that is consistent with when you use those type drugs, that they can delineate between historical or shamanistic type artifacts.
That's very interesting. Yeah. And I think that some of these glyph sites and some of these caves, I mean, were they just random spots that they decided to draw on the walls and draw on these caves, or were they already very holy places to these hunter-gatherer peoples? Right. I mean, like the Cave of the Swimmers, the Cave of the Beasts, were they just shelters that they went in to do shamanic rituals, or what, did they know something about these sites from before, and that they knew they were important, so they did these pilgrimages to them with the pre-knowledge that it was a holy site? I mean, you have these areas in the Southwest where it looks like manipulated bedrock, and then they put glyphs over manipulated bedrock as almost to say, look, this is where the gods touched the earth, and we're going to put our glyphs here to memorialize a place where the gods touched the earth. Or, you know,
and the cave painting in France, the Chevreau, the oldest cave painting, that with the bulls inside that cave, that were like, how far back did they go? Huh?
Oh, you'd have to watch that documentary with Werner Herzog.
Chevreau, I can't pronounce it correctly, but it shows that really cool bull up on the wall inside that cave, deep in it, that's red ochre and stuff. They thought it was just a primitive human drawing out a bull for art or something, but they found out that it actually has a 3D aspect if you hit the shade of it just right, and it shows the constellation of Taurus with Cygnus at the shoulder of the bull, which is where the comet impacts through the Younger Dryas originated from in the night sky perspective. So it was a map of the night of the celestial bodies, but it was how old? 20,000, 30,000 years.
Yeah. And there's one stalactite in that cave that I'm reminded of. It's a dual glyph. It's like a feminine like goddess figure, also mixed with a bull. So there's like this anamorphic aspect to it, right? Again, like we're seeing with these other glyphs, these ant people, these anthropomorphic blending of animal human hybrid type things.
Yeah, and the earliest carving that they can date, I think it was made of wood, it's like 20, 30 feet tall. It's got the head of a lion, and it shows it's given birth to like a human being beneath it. But that motif is on every continent that they found when they look. But that one goes back like 36,000 years ago. But they found it on Easter Island. They found it in Peru.
The Squatterman glyph, right? A perfect example of
that too.
That thing is all over the world. The God Self icon. Now, this is the one where you have the central being holding on to either two snakes or wrestling two animals, holding two birds by the neck. That's what's known as the God Self icon. And that is, I mean, that's in India, that's in Egypt, it's all over the world. Again, Tiwanaku and
Pumapunku. It's on the entry stone, that Viracocha or whatever.
Exactly. Yep. This God Self icon is represented in architecture, but also in glyphs, and it may be related to the squatter man symbolism. And because they are often seen side by side, you have other glyphs that are kind of maybe loosely related. I wonder about certain glyphs like the Kokopelli flute player. I want to know how that one is connected, because you see that one a lot. And then there's also you'll see around these glyphs footprints. Have you seen these little tiny foot, like they've illustrated like walking footprints up the sides of their glyphs? I see that a lot. I see a lot of cross.
Remember those I sent you from the cave of the Animal Master in Southern California, where it looks like a Murumuru there, and it's got a little footpath up to it, where it looks like it's showing follow this path to this place, and then some of it looks like a switch gate for electricity, of a logic gate, of an on and off circuit.
And then was it Colombia that they recently found that huge cliff with all the red ochre glyphs on it, and it's just got a plethora of symbols. But you can look in there and go
massive.
Yeah, you can see the lozenge symbol, which is the diamond, the repeating diamond pattern that we see all over the world. That's in it. The zigzag motif, which you'll see in a lot of other areas. I mean, these glyphs aren't as isolated and insular as you would think. They're definitely there's cross-cultural connections that imply either travel or communication or a shared genealogy, a shared
and with the Amazon basin, the reason that it has such lush vegetation and greenery there, and just prolifically can grow all this wild foliage, the soil, the entire Amazon basin was built with it was a manufactured soil. It is still very sought after soil today, that it keeps replenishing itself with nutrients and has terrific growing properties. But they found that the first guy that when the conquistadors came in South America, one guy accidentally took a trip all the way from the eastern mouth of the Amazon clear across to the west, and finally made it back, and told them that I've seen at least 20 million people with all these cities along the way. It was fantastic. It's amazing. And then 100 years later, somebody made the same trip and they came back and said, man, that guy's a freaking liar. There's nothing there. It's completely wild vegetation, never been cut down. Nothing's in there. A few mad natives.
Weeds.
The diseases had advanced faster than the conquistadors and had wiped 95% of the the native inhabitants out. And it had time to grow back within 100 years to completely overgrow the entire place. But they have found with the LiDAR scans now, they have found all these cities that he said would existed, and they're there. And not only are they there, they are plotted out with celestial bodies. And there was a kid that's like in 6th grade. He looked at and he figured out that they were constellations, and he predicted that there was one star missing and that there should be a city to indicate this missing star. So he said, hey, I think there'll be a city here. And like, kid, shut up, go away. But somebody just took it on a whim and went and looked. I'm like, yep, he's right. Enough. There's a city there, and that is.
Someone should have muted his mic.
Well, there's a law to this, right? Isn't it? It's like we were talking about the Earth grids and the way that they surveyed these sites and the places that they chose to put these sites on. It definitely speaks of a higher sacred geometry, if you want to call it, right? And that they're all building these sites according to this principle of sacred geometry or Earth geometry, geomancy, things like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're on Natural High, Linda, because we love this topic. We're passionate. It's something we have to know a little bit of something about. So it's always fun.
I know.
Then I get together like Shannon. Shannon and I can talk UFO stuff forever. And me and Andrew putting our minds together on the ancient stuff. We go until one of us loses our voice. That's why I'm hoarse now. We've had a long talk this afternoon. But I do the same thing with Shannon on talking ufology.
Right. Oh, I know it.
It's just amazing. And
that's
where we want to build a bridge between the modern ufology and proving that in antiquity we've had paleo-contact probably at least as long as humans have been here, and obviously some of these non-human intelligences have been on this planet longer than we have. It doesn't mean they made us. It just means this is their planet also. And I dare say they're not going to let us destroy it and go quietly into that good night, with the rest of all the living creation here, because all indications that this is an anomaly, with the construction of the moon and all that. You don't go through that much trouble to let one species destroy all the rest of it. We're in a celestial oasis in a rocky desert in this arm of the galaxy, and what I found is that even in our outer arm, there is like one sun per 10 square light years. So we're an anomaly even where we're at, because there's an average of 4 suns per square light years in our area. But when you get closer into the center of the galaxy, there's like 10 suns per square 10 astronomical units. So they're not conducive to life as we know. There's too much conflict over that planet's pulling everything around, and some suns, they rotate around each other. Some have planets that go around all these different suns and run the circuits. It's just a complete clusterfuck. So
our solar system is not typical. We're not a binary system. Like you said,
there's nothing typical about it.
We have planets that are just not in the right orientation or doing what they're supposed to be doing for the story of the solar system. True. Venus.
And most of them are tilted on their axis just a little bit. They've been in one. I think Saturn is tilted sideways and running backwards. I think Venus is as well.
It's car crash evidence, right? There was a solar system car crash, and that's the evidence of it. We just need to find out.
Chan Thomas and the Adam and Eve story, and Velikovsky and Worlds in Collision. They both predicted it, and they weren't. They weren't corroborating their stories together. They both came to these conclusions, independently. And the inner asteroid belt, like Tiamat and all those ancient myths of the planet of the gods fighting and destroying Kronos that represented where the asteroid belt is now, that planet sucked to be it, because it's now under rubble.
Yeah, right.
And so there's all indications, and Venus has such kinetic energy in it still. Something hit it like a pool ball, and it's still spinning, backwards and
like,
hot. It's
Like they put English on
It
it,
is-
so they hit it and it spun it.
Exactly. Yeah. They hit that. They just spun that bitch. Sorry for my
And then,
language, but yeah,
well,
it
the
was.
Saturn, the rings themselves, right? Why would an established solar system have planets with ring systems? You know, that should have, all those rings should have coalesced a long time ago.
Yeah.
What in the wide world of sports is going on here?
Essentially, yes.
was
Yeah, I mean,
the two theories of how the moon came to be.
Yeah, the solar system is speaking of different evidence. The formation of the solar system is not the natural, gradual, peaceful evolution that a lot of people think.
There's been gradualism of our planet of the human species is that there was no catastrophes, and we it was so convenient before they found Göbekli Tepe to say 6,000 years ago humanity came out of the dark ages and caves, and that they're saying that gradualism says that life that civilization started 6,000 years ago in Mesopotamia and then progressed out from there, but then Göbekli Tepe happened, they're wrenching the gears, and then they had to take it out 12,000 years and doubled the age of civilization, so completely destroyed that model, and they had to make up a new one, which is exactly what they're doing, is making it up.
That is what they're doing. They're having to scramble because they have an outlier now that doesn't fit. And I mean, contextually, as far as you and I are concerned, yeah, it is not the beginning of anything. This looks more like the end of something.
They talk about Atlantis. It didn't have to be a literal city called Atlantis. No. There was an advanced race on the planet at the time that probably was partly contributed to Göbekli Tepe, and in that era of man that is not here anymore. That was a dying of the previous age of humanity, and they're not here anymore. And the survivors, like right now, if we take a huge impact on the planet, the ones that are going to survive are going to be the most native and primitive people on the planet. And they're going to tell these tales when they go walking through the rubble of our cities when they've never seen them before. They're going to think, well, evidently all this technology didn't save them, so it must be evil, right? So then you come down with these legends and myths that technology is bad, stay away from it. It's voodoo, it's hoodoo, don't touch it.
And then you become the Amish. Yeah.
Stranger danger. And then it becomes institutionalized. But these ancient hermetic, I've been doing some intense research lately, trying to tie all this together, is like with Randall Carlson with the esoteric of the hermetic knowledge that has been encoded in the Masonic lodges and the Sabians and all of them redundantly in alchemy. Al Moon did it for the Moors. They all replicated this ancient esoteric language that talked about how humanity is going to be that we are not alone. We have a grand architect, and the all-seeing eye wasn't the Illuminati. It is the grand architect of all, the creator of all. Call it what you want. When Masons they believe in one God. You don't have to be the God of Yahweh. It's just that they understand that there is a grand architect. That is the
G, the capital G.
Yes, and that was the grand architect, and that it laid out a plan for humanity when its time was come to where we reach a certain stage of our advancement in civilization, that those mysteries, like in the Bible also, they will unfold and be told. And Randall, I watched recently, is talking about where he feels it's time for him, that he's been working to declassify the seekers of Masonic mysticism, Kabbalah, all that. It's all the same, but in different languages for different people. Sure, but it's all the same core message, is that when it's time, we're going to unpack this, and there are ways that we're going to have to protect the planet, because there's, he's looking at that of the natural impactors, and that there are cycles of catastrophe, and we're approaching another cycle of catastrophe. But he may not be factoring in that there are active, and he does ascribe to earlier breakaway humans that may have went to the moon to survive. So he does believe in that part of non-human intelligences here, contemporary. But he ascribes that in antiquity, also at the Younger Dryas, they probably escaped. Each every 2,000 to 3,000 years for the last 200,000 years, we've been reset to the brink of extinction. This 5,000 years is the longest run we've had ever, in the known history of humanity.
So, I mean, achieved a population and a density and a technological level that, is unprecedented.
And we had overt little g gods living among us before the last flood at about 3,000 BC. But that accord and that age of man, dwelling with whatever they were here with us, are now covert instead of overt for a reason. A reset of humanity is, to allow us to progress, with a little bit of nudging and prodding and infusions here and there to try and coax us along, but let us evolve ourselves without outside interference that didn't end well every time they started injecting their toys in. Things blew up. You don't give your 5-year-old a shotgun. It's just not going to end well.
No, it's a passive, maybe benevolent, but it's definitely passive civilization building endeavor. Slowly but surely, maybe put some bumpers on. It's a bowling alley with the bumpers on the side, or it's a drag strip with the concrete barriers on both sides. So you don't go flying off into the crowd. So you don't throw your ball into the other person's lane. You've got some leeway here. You can either get a strike or you can get one pin. But we're going to make sure that you don't fail or don't screw it up to the point where our whole
and we've been provided free will up until now that nuclear detonations seem to be a change in rules of engagement that they may have a right to self-defense because they live here too. So they are doing the minimal amount of contact possible to try and telegraph their intent, and then they keep escalating a little more. We're not deproliferating, and it's very, very likely we're going to have some kind of a large scale nuclear event sometime in our lifetime possibly, and that's indicates a deal breaker for these other life forms that live here, that they're not going to accept that and let us destroy all of this. It was so incredibly made that we can't even fathom as humans how all this was created. It's just inconceivable.
Don't ruin my night, Rob. Don't ruin my night.
It's like biting the hand that feeds you. And you kind of look at these terrorist groups in the Middle East. They don't accept their megalithic heritage as theirs, so they choose to obliterate it. They don't like representative, figurative representations. So statues and things that show people's faces.
Buddha, I think it was Buddha statues and stuff during the Gulf War.
Yes, sir. Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan blew them to hell. Totally ripped them out of the bedrock. You can see the befores and afters. They even filmed themselves doing it. Same with the Lama Su statues in Iraq. And Jimmy from Bright Insight will tell you about how he had to defend some of these statues against these people. But then you watch these terrorists attempt, and you can see this in Pakistan too against Indian artifacts. Watch them try to destroy these things, and watch how much work and effort it is. They have to bust out the power tools just to deface them because they're such hard stone. So that calls into question the creation process. How did they make them, right? If modern power tools can barely deface them, and it takes a whole group of terrorists with steel
multiple explosions.
I mean, there's just so much more involved in terms of destroying these things. So that invokes a very powerful creation process, right?
There's that duality of as above, so below. That there's the esoteric side to it, the yin and yang, and the side component to it that seems to be infused in all nature of organic and inorganic propagation of energy of energy and mass, that there is an equal but opposite reaction to. Even when you see like fractal pattern that like Lou talked about, when like you have a certain demographic rise up with a polarized message, you're going to have an equal but opposite group that's going to rise up to challenge them, and they're going to fight for equilibrium again. And it seems to me, and this is just my perspective of it from my history and experience, that they're engaging with as minimal as possible telegraphing intent, that they're not happy with the nukes. And obviously we are allowed to destroy each other all we want with like World War II and all that, but if you start taking away free will and limiting it, when people start getting killed, that's a slippery slope. And by the time you're done, you've got nothing but automatons with no free will. So it's unfortunate in the flesh that we endure pain and suffering, but this isn't the end of it all. And every every culture throughout humanity has indicated they believe in life after death of some sort. So do I think that they're going to intervene with to stop nuclear holocaust of the planet? Well, they've taken over. I thought going into this that there were just 2 or 3 nuclear events where they've shut off our missiles here and in Russia, and they just turn them on once in Russia and not here. Well, no, they've done it dozens of times in both places, and they've also turned them on at least once in both places. And they check out all the new tactics and new nuclear assets as they get rolled out. So they are keeping up. And this is what an advanced scouting party would do in the military, is go in and assess the locals of where you're going to come in, whether it's peaceful or not so peaceful. You have to know what they're capable of and where you need to affect the situation to make the most positive outcome.
Sure.
So
think about it like a zookeeper, right? You're at the primate exhibit, and all the primates all of a sudden learn how to make arrowheads and spear points and attach them to sticks. Okay, well now all of a sudden the zookeepers are going to be very interested in those abilities of those apes, right? Because those spear points could hurt the zookeepers, so they don't want to have apes running around in the enclosures with spear points, because you could hurt the guests, you could hurt the zookeepers. So it's a way of you might not go in and slap the ape on the wrist and take away his stuff right away, but you might discourage them from doing that, or you might take them away while they're in sleeping or something, and just do it in a passive way.
You may let them fight it out, but once they start killing the zookeepers and everybody else walking to the zoo, it's time to step in. But are you going to take their weapons away, or are you going to destroy them and their weapons?
How much do you involve yourself as a zookeeper in that scenario? Yeah,
I would hope that they are. I would hope that there's deproliferation only and not eradication to go along with it. But then if you do that and don't intervene, you're going to have places like Israel that exist because they do have nukes. You're going to create an imbalance of power, and like Iran would come storming in a heartbeat to wipe Israel off the face of the planet. Are they then going to police that as well? I mean, it's a wild crapshoot at this point to speculate. We can speculate all we want, but that's why I wanted to establish the historical context of what's happened in the past as best that we can discern, and then fast forward to today. And that's where I've been talking with you about, and the team, of helping document and where we can identify paleo-contact in the past and see if we can find a pattern of behavior that can fit this, if it's got a precedence. What to expect because of what's already happened. And Jack Vallee does a pretty good job of outlining this. And I'm reading some of his books right now that one of my friends was nice enough to buy, some of them for me. And I'm putting them to good use to educate myself more on that. And, there's a lot there. And I think that I do hold out hope for humanity that we're going to survive this, and we're not going to have to face, complete annihilation. The fact that we've been allowed to go 5,000 years now tells me that there was a new plan for humanity that changed over the last 200,000 years that is now a different narrative of what it's allowed to take place. So there are precedences of civilizations completely disappearing, but we're the anomaly now of 5,000 years into this. I wouldn't think that we would be allowed to evolve this far technologically and things just to set us back to the Stone Age again. It doesn't make sense historically when you look at it.
I absolutely agree. There's too much investment, too much time spent and resources spent at this stage to wipe it and start it all over again. And there might not be enough time to start this all over again and get it to this point. There might not be another reset that will produce the level of humanity that we have today. This might have been the tweak that they needed. And then at this point, the agenda is running close to plan because there hasn't been much involvement or adjusting recently. We have not seen involvement of altering sites, ancient sites, putting new ancient sites down, dropping down a new Göbekli Tepe, or, you can say maybe some of the crop circles, but I need a little bit more than crop circles. I need manipulated stonework. I need megalithic stones moved overnight and placed somewhere public wherever they can, give me something obvious to tell me that they are directly involving themselves currently. But I think it's more like you've been saying, it's more of a passive behind the scenes effort. And for the most part, we've been going between the bumpers at this point, So we're not incurring their wrath because we're kind of playing by their rules, or we are developing the way they want us to.
Yeah. And we've got Overwatch. We always have, because we are still here. That is testament when people ask me, well, we're left to the devices and the whims of them, whatever them are. They can do what they want to us. Well, if they could, they would, and they haven't. So we do have benevolent oversight of some type, whether you want to believe in God or not. I do, but that's my faith. That I can't prove it, but I feel it. That works for me. So, can I?
It's almost like you don't
want to different.
You don't want to incur their wrath. You don't want them to show up, because if you're doing something so out of whack with their plan that they have to show up and fix it, that might be what the Sodom Gomorrah narrative is about, and some of these other Mohenjo-Daro areas and things.
They didn't pay heed to the warnings. Angels came down and told them, look, you guys have to repent, or we're going to kill you all. And they didn't. And they're like, hey, send them out. We want to rape them. And I go, hell no, watch this trick. They get Lot and his family out, and then the entire place was turned to molten glass.
And maybe at the early fledgling stages, there needed to be a lot of that kind of pruning done by our zookeepers, or by our.
There was corruption of the bloodlines and the DNA of humans, and it does show that there were chimeras being made and all this, and aberrations to the natural world, not just humanity, but all these. If it's true with all these, lamasus and, chimera, where they take parts of one animal and make it, bastardizing what was made in harmony in creation and taking it afoul and corrupting it. And that corruption had to be cleansed out.
Abominations, right?
Yes, we don't have those abominations now.
So point. I mean,
and here's a kicker for some people that show early sentient beings of advanced capabilities here, whatever they were or still are. There are cart ruts that go back at least 3 million years in Turkey that run across fault lines where they can establish that there were earthquakes that cracked the cart ruts and dislocated them, so they're no longer in perfect, parallel with each other. The crust has slipped and moved. That earthquake, they can prove unequivocally when it took place. So the cart rut had to be older than 3 million years when that earthquake occurred. And if I remember correctly, one of them goes back over 25 million years old. And there's Andrew Kolpin, I think his name was, the Russian guy, or Chechen, or Czechoslovakian or something. He spent 15 years of his life documenting these cart ruts all over the place. They're on every continent. They're in the Americas. They're on the Azores. They're in every continent on the planet. There are cart ruts of some sort.
They're in Georgia at Uplishka. There's and what another anomaly is the fact that when they're on the islands, like on Malta, they just go off into the water. They just go right off.
And there's also some. One goes from one island, and then if you follow it and if you had a laser pointer line, it picks up again on the next island. So there was a scooping out. And the continuation of those cart ruts that don't go into the ocean, they go straight to the next island, and that bedrock that was in between them is gone. So they weren't from dragging carts, and that's just absurd. You can go out and drag a wooden cart as many times as you want across my concrete patio out here, and it will never even leave a mark on it. To think that they were dragging ox-pulled carts with 2 sticks, and they were able to drag it on the exact same spot every time, millions of times, to wear down these paths.
Or that it somehow was soil and then turned into rock later. I mean, that doesn't work.
No.
And the cart ruts just petrified around it. No.
They displace mud too, because there's curling on some of them where you can see where it's squished out, like you're going mudding, and then it solidifies. But they're solidified into rock. There's curling and displacement of the bedrock. You don't displace bedrock unless it's fluid.
Yes. Yeah. That kind of plastolithic state that mud is in.
Yes.
It's malleable
and
pliable.
And was it an artifact of the vehicle that drove across it? And it just happens that if you turn it down to its lowest setting and it comes from another planet with a lot more dense gravity, and if you turn it down, because it had to have that much force to leave an imprint in solid rock to not slide around, but you bring it here and then it starts digging ruts because you can't turn it down anymore to not, dig in, then that's what you get.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like taking a set of mud tires and taking them out in the snow or something like that. It's like your gear was not tuned or calibrated for the environment that you brought it to. Yeah, that's something to think about too, as far as their energy and their capabilities. Like outside, we know that there's an absence of their development process of this technology, right? We just have the megalithic heritage that's fully formed. So where did they develop their technology, and what were the conditions? Like,
there's no sign of a pre-industrial age that we had, that would be chemically left, and some of our bedrock is over 200 million years old. There is no chemical trace of our garbage or any garbage of a previous civilization that was using some kind of a chemical signature. Their trash should be left over chemically. There is no sign of that trash anywhere on the planet of an industrial age or pre-industrial age, wood burning for fuel. None of it. It doesn't exist. It's not there.
And there's no ancient sites that show, well, they were trying to figure out earthquake-proof design here. No. They just show up with a perfected earthquake-proof design. So when people tell me, they go, oh, well, that design is that way because it's earthquake-proof.
Well, and they can argue,
isn't it? It's not satisfactory just
and
to
they say
the
clamps were stabilization in earthquake zones. Well, I was an engineer. I used to engineer structures to withstand shear pressure, overpressure, blast pressure, hurricanes, all of it. I've engineered it. Skyscrapers, all that stuff I've engineered. Even DoD projects for nuclear blasts I've engineered. So I know when I look at these metal clamps, they have no structural integrity whatsoever on these buildings that they say are for earthquake protection. They don't have any protection for those stones.
Unnecessary.
To me, they are for continuity, for a grounding strip. So the high quartz content blocks have a continuity of energy flow from the earth energy, whatever they were conducting through them. They had continuity of energy flow. So it was distributed out. And Shannon made a good point.
You think of it more like components of a computer than temples. These sites were energetic, not just a reveration, sites to revere your God at. No, these sites
functional. Shannon brought it up a while back. He's like, well, if they used it for continuity and grounding, and if you hit it with high energy weapons, and it is able to disperse it with these clamps and stuff, he made that point that it would help absorb it with that grounding and then continuity that would spread it out more diffusely.
Like a lightning rod or the grounding strap.
Like you're right. Because I showed him where some looked like they were hit with high-powered energy beams and things, and I was discussing the potential uses for the clamps and things, and he's like, well, in addition to just grounding and transference of acoustic or electromagnetic energy, it would also help diffuse a high-energy weapon.
Yeah,
so
because look at the ones that have the damage holes, the ancient sites with the walls, the blown out holes that we are assuming were from clamps inside. They're still standing. The structures are perfectly stable, regardless of whether or not they have these giant holes in them. So, like a good example is Pergamon in Turkey. Go look at Pergamon and pictures of that thing. It is riddled with these holes. I mean, top to bottom, it looks like something affected the structure. And like we're talking,
how would they know where those clamps were to dig them out in most of those structures? There are some you can guess where they're at, but a lot of them you can't. And what I was pointing out to you earlier today, there's a place where they had when Mount Vesuvius erupted, that they had some people took shelter below it, unfortunately, and such high heat, it literally cooked their brains and boiled it within their skulls, and their skulls popped like eggshells that were on high boil, and it left iron stains inside of it. But it was such high energy that did it burst out. And these clamps, when you have all these blocks that are so hermetically sealed on each other, they are so precise. These clamps are sealed inside these blocks. So when you superheat that, they're going to explode out. And then at the weakest point, and that's when you might get damage holes from, possibly.
Very well. Yeah. And then what kind of
out?
Yeah. So then that you're no longer looking at scavengers needing metal, like to make arrowheads and spears and knives. You're looking at maybe some kind of energetic event, if you want to call it a cataclysm or an attack. But it is,
and if it's vitrified, if the structure is all vitrified, like we see clear from Scotland down to the Mediterranean, all these mystery forts are vitrified. They don't know how to turn the glass.
I heard about that one in
That was
Scotland
a
recently.
high heat event of some sort. Many of them probably.
Yeah. So what is this evidence indicative of? Same with Sodom
if you've got
and Gomorrah.
damage holes. Yeah, if you've got damage holes and the structure is vitrified, and that's something we can study and verify and do a scientific analysis of, is see where the damage holes are, how many sites also have a vitrification of the surface where those damage holes are. Then you can start developing a pattern here.
Agreed. And see, that's some of the background work I've been doing lately, is working on not only increasing my catalog and refining it, but we're also going to make a system to where you can search this catalog for hallmarks, directly. Say, I want to know how many sites have nubs. Show me all the sites with nubs, and then show me all the sites with these scoop marks or pinch holes or any of these other classifiers. And a story will emerge the more we catalog, the more we document. Because I'm already seeing patterns. I'm seeing like, all right, one of the requirements, it seems like, is megalithic stonework. Everywhere we're looking is megalithic stonework. Then precision joinery, mortarless construction. That's another really big one.
How many different styles of blocks do we have of construction to show how many ages this was possibly?
Yeah,
I can think of 4 right off, from Cyclopean on up.
Polygonal, then you have the ashlar blocks, and then you have rubble and garbage above it, which is anything that they
and complex polygonal, and then the pillowed ones that may have been an expansion from heat. But
that's right.
I have a question, if I can interject.
Go ahead.
Have we figured out how they did those joints? I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen them in South America. I've seen them everywhere. How do they make these bricks fit together the way they do? Anybody figured that out yet?
Softening. That's the only thing I can think of, because you take 2 marshmallows and you get them soft and warm, and you smush them against each other, and you make a little wall out of them. The joinery is going to be perfect. And if you can somehow put that in the freezer and let it freeze, and then you have a solid marshmallow little wall there, the joinery, the
if they're softening it, have we figured out that process?
No, because that is the one aspect we don't have, and that they will not show us anymore. They've stopped with, like, the nubs, for example. The nubs are part of this softening tech. We don't see nubs anymore because we
can soften them, but we can't solidify them.
Yeah, not the way.
And on the 24, some of them were chemically, or I wouldn't say chemically. It's like they were mechanically, and I'd have to talk to a chemist about this because I don't know. There has to have been a process that's associated with, like, Cooper pairs, gravity, to where they were able to loosen up the chemical bonds and make it a superconductor to keep the structural integrity of each component from melding with each other, but allow it to pass through each other. And
well, like you're saying, if you just had a softened megalith and you plonked it on top of some other softened megaliths, it's going to be a big runny pile on the floor, right? They're somehow able to soften them and then harden them again. They just leave them soft enough to where they settle into each other. Let them sit in.
To contour, and there are places where megalithic stones are away from each other, and you can see the outline of where they were butted up against each other, like you said, to leave that impression of where they made contact, and then they had a crispy edge around it where it conformed to it.
Ridge.
Like you said.
Lip blocks. That's one of our classifiers. I have a video on that if anyone's interested. Lip blocks it's a phenomenon where you have these ashlar blocks, and it looks like the edges got like a soft bar of chocolate. They just kind of ooze out around the edges, like you took an ice cream sandwich and you put a bunch of ice cream sandwiches on top of each other, and then you squish them down, right? So how that it speaks of softening somehow. I don't know how they did it, but it's
why they use blocks. Because they could. That's why. It was the easiest way to build a bunch of little ones when you can make great big ones, because size wasn't the problem for them.
If you don't
they didn't care how big they got.
Yeah,
the one in Yangshan Quarry is 6,000 tons. And if you go with Benai Sharia being which I do believe is a accurate place, some of those go over 10,000 tons, and they're over 100 feet tall, and they ran over the entire mountain range.
Even if you don't want to include that, if it's too far out there, nearby at Kronstadt in Russia, you have a bevel block fortress wall with huge megaliths, and they're nubbed. Like, you have nubbed structures in Russia, no one's telling you about that. Of course, they won't let you talk about Gornaya Shoria either, but there are many sites in Russia that I think we are not being told about that are connected. I mean, Kronstadt, Russia is just, it'll blow your mind. Please look that one up. That one shows bevel blocks, polygonal blocks. It shows scrape marks. There's different types of polygonal all at the same site. And then you have ashlar blocks with nubs on them.
Yeah.
I mean, completely out of context of Peru or China or India.
But there is a site in Peru that has the exact same advanced polygonal as a sister site in Turkey. And both of them have a sacred lake that has a concave bottom and an epicenter that they calculated. The one in Peru has 40 tons of TNT equivalency, and where all those where a monolith was exploded and parts of it are laying around in like hundreds of tons sections each. You know, that upside down stairway that's on that jagged rock that was blown up, and it's got an epicenter that's around that sacred lake. And in Turkey, there's one that was 20 tons of TNT equivalency. It has a sacred lake, and it's got the exact same specific advanced polygonal masonry there as well, and in its symbology. They were sister sites, and they were both blown up.
Sister sites is a great concept. There's a lot of like
it showed that they were the same build, same.
A good example of that is in India at Trikutam Temple. Trikutam Temple has big polygonal retaining walls with nubs on them. And you know, if you didn't know any better, you would think it was just indicative of India. But then if you're shown something from like Ollantaytambo in Peru, you see that it's not just similar. It's like they are running the same playbook. Their tools are using the same principles. There's the same limitations or the same power level output. It's definitely an echo, a sister site type situation. I mean, there's many of these. I mean, you could say Pumapunku in Bolivia, right? It's very anomalous if you look at it by itself, but it's got nubs. It's got these other incised motifs. It's got pinch holes and all these other things. So if you look at it in the global context, it totally fits for it to be there. But in isolation, it doesn't fit. It is an anomaly. And
Bob Berkins is saying this guest is great. Wait till he shows up next time prepared, because I gave him 10 minutes notice for this one. When he brings his catalog and you and I can go through the pictures, we're going to blow the lid off this thing with all three of us.
It's Dan Stevens said this in his interview with the Amish Inquisition. It's one thing for me to just say these things and rattle off these sites, but you really got to see it. I mean,
we're going to bring pictures next time.
A lot of this stuff I learned through Vlad9VT's channel. And what his approach is. He might give you a little blurb at the beginning about what his thoughts are, but for the most of the video, it's just a slideshow set to music. You put the pieces together yourself, and just hours and hours of just laying back and watching.
He has some
wild photos pop up.
He's got some excellent statuary and iconography of ancient, what we would consider alien beings.
He's in that wheelhouse with us. He has other alternative
so we can
thoughts.
We can bring his pictures to bear and give him credit for it, and he doesn't mind and show those, because people want to see evidence of ancient paleo-contact with advanced beings. I dare say that this would meet that request in spades. I think
so too. And I think Vlad might be one of the only channels doing that, that's willing to say, all right, I know my history aspect, and I'm investigating the UFO UAP phenomenon. What can I bring to the table with my ancient history knowledge to validate what
precedents? We've been here before. Like Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun. We can prove it because, like you said, the stones don't lie.
No, they can't lie. They're testimony.
Oh, I was going to say, at your convenience, we need to do a change of subject, but go ahead.
Well, yeah.
I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. Setting of our communities, that's a great kind of book in there, is that's what we need in terms of our community, is this cross camp discussion, right? We need the ancient history guys to talk to the UAP guys, and we
need cross pollination.
Yeah, because we're in isolation here. We've each got pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, but we're not going to make a full image without sharing our work. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Yep.
Well, we got some breaking news. Last night, Rob and I received some really cool information, and it may look like our mission statement is going to change. Right now, Rob and I have guests on here. We're doing all this work for charity. Now, what can we share so far, Rob? Not much.
With the charity, or
no, the conversation about a new mission statement.
oh well, with amnesty passed with Congress, where whistleblowers can come not face reprisals if some of them want to remain anonymous and come forward, that can be shared in the public purview, or if it's to be shared to Congress, but they still want a layer of anonymity if it's not classified, top secret, then we can provide a outlet for them to come forward and give their testimony and not have to reveal their identity if they want their story told, and give them that protection that they are not going to, that we will, like journalists, we don't have to reveal our sources of our information, that we are allowed, we have protection by law as journalists to protect our sources, and we damn sure will. So
so we're going to have some secret meetings in order to get this all figured out. And once we do, we'll give you the name of it. Just right out of thin air, I was thinking military witness protection program. Right off our name.
We'll pass out Dakota rings when we get there.
Yep. Also, other breaking news. So I have to apologize to everyone. I was off the air, taking a couple of phone calls, and I wish I can tell you guys the life-changing phone call that just came in. It literally changed my life in several ways. As soon as
awesome,
and this goes for Rob too. He doesn't even know, but I could tell you, Rob, that our lives are going to change.
Somebody's gonna come fix my truck.
I did.
Me too, please.
I got the SWAT team knocking down your door, man. I told him you had an arsenal.
Oh man, I got plenty of lead for everybody. I'll share.
No, I can't even tell you. You can imagine who was on the phone. Okay, just imagine who could possibly be on the phone. That person was on the phone. Then another person that's related to that person I was on the phone with. But the phone call that I took from the original person told me things that just boom. And it's like, I'll share you one thing.
Dude, and then I'll be like, dude, and then we're both like, dude.
Oh man, dude. All right. So I hope
Esmeralda.
I built up a big teaser here. And this person also told me I could share this, that I need to write a book. I said, I'll do that because you and Rob will be doing the forwarding of that book. So there you go.
Yeah.
How you like that teaser? You got to stick around, folks. Hit that like and subscribe. We're doing this for charity, folks. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Right. I can't.
Off. You're right.
That's so admirable that you guys are doing that. That's something that I realized when I got into this real quick. It's like, you're going to get called out as a grifter if you are not, if you don't have altruistic intentions, right?
Yes.
And
if your heart's not.
You got to keep your integrity 100%. That's more important than anything else. Subscribers and views and all that. As long as your integrity is intact, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, like if you came on and you had all this. Yeah, if you claim these different alien species and this, that, and the other, and you got all these pseudo type of qualifications, man, look, I was an investigator for 20 years. I call bullshit when I see it. Mm-hmm. And there's some people out there in this community that you can learn their shit if you read their books. Okay. That just tell you something. Look at their
and if they're selling disclosure, that's your first strike.
Yep. Right. Think of it this way. If the aliens told them to give you a message, do you think they say, hey, but charge $29.95 for the book?
Right.
And we're not going to give you any proof of it.
No. See, that's another reason why I revere Brian Forster so highly, is because, yes, he has his books. Yes, he has his tours. But he also has a YouTube channel with 100% of it for free if you want to take the time to watch it.
Yeah.
So it's there. you know, that you
Yeah,
gotta.
for people
I am
making money.
100% on board. I hope there is healing because, you know, Shannon obviously, you know, is fighting a very life-threatening battle right now, and I am in continual chronic pain where I just can't, you know, I'm not living the life I want to live because of the
We
chronic pain
talk each
and low
other
blood
through it
pressure.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We help each
we
other
have to
out.
focus on the positive there are, and we can't focus on the negative. It's just too overwhelming. And so, yeah, we just got to keep moving forward. And Esmeralda, you were worried about this would allow for spread of disinformation. They wouldn't be hiding their anonymity from us, and we would be able to have other people that can like say an elected like officials that a panel that can give they can authenticate that yes, this is accurate, and we reviewed their testimony and it matches, you know, what they provided proof of it, and you know, it's like bonding for any business or something. You know, if they like that bond, they get it revoked, so they have a skin in the game. You know, we would put our reputations in the game, and whoever authenticates this, they're going to be bound to that too. If they lie, they lose. So
same way with ancient history,
not gonna,
right? We get some people that don't want to have their names associated with the photos that they give us. Other people very much want their names associated with the photos. So it's just, you got to decide.
I told Rob last night. We have to start looking at how people look at us. So you will not find us on Gaia. You won't find us. We have a brand. Whether I kind of realized or not, it kind of came natural. This whole thing, anyways, it kind of. It was a whole great organic thing. Even how I even got in this position, in this chair, talking to you guys right now, there's a story behind it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know what? I don't think I want to change anything in my past because
the three of us,
the things that I have in front of me are
the reason
awesome.
we are friends now and associates is because we all have one common thing, you know, well, more than one, but we have altruism. We are doing this for the betterment of humanity, not self-serving. We want to give back, you know, with what we have to bring to bear to help. You know, I want to make this planet a better place for me, having been in it, or at least try while I'm still here. So when I'm gone, you know, it's a little bit better place, hopefully. And if it's not from lack of trying.
Yeah, that's what more benevolent and altruistic thing could you do than try to make a difference in your lifetime that will outlast you and be a better benefit to everyone else after you than it is to you yourself. You know, like this research I'm doing, it's helping me, but I know there's going to be researchers after me that this is going to help them.
You're laying foundations with the nubs, especially that group with your group. You guys are laying foundations that are going to be written in the when they have to change the history books. You got your guys' work, our work. You know, I'm taking a small part of it, but you guys have done, you know, infinitely more than me. I'm just glad to tag along, but they are going to be using your guys' work from this snub group as seminal to prove that there was contact across all these continents as a base place to start by proving it. That in these hallmarks that you've got in catalog, you've already got the documented proof to show Paleo-contact in antiquity, when these civilizations should not have even known the other continents existed, but they are all interconnected at that time. So
intimately, right?
It's going to be fundamental, and your work is going to, you know, I hope, you know, it lasts as long as humanity does, but it's going to change the history books literally with what you guys have done and the research you guys have drilled down on. Because I don't see Randall and them, none of them are able to authenticate like the nubs and all that stuff at all. They don't understand it.
It's either trepidation or they're trepidation or they don't understand it. But yes, eventually it's going to have to be, it's a topic that's going to have to be addressed eventually. And I would like for them, when that time comes, that they will have some kind of catalog or database where they can pull empirical data from and have a leg up. Because they've all taught me, the alternative researchers, they've taught me so much. What better thing that I could do than give back and give, you know, Brian Forster, for example, he's taught me so much. I think it's my duty to him and to the rest of these guys like Praveen Mohan and these other cross-cultural thinkers to give them something that maybe they don't have the time to do themselves, or like, you know,
and to show how
do this,
to show how selfless you are. you've got an interview you did with Nikiana Jones with Brian Forrester that that most people couldn't wait to put it up on their YouTube page, but you didn't because you wanted Nikiana to get a boost up, putting it on hers exclusively and let her run with it. And that's been months ago that you.
Yeah. The monolithic channel
so
idea.
You have forgone that. You've forgone that notoriety for your own part to help her boost hers. That was selfless what you've done with her. When Brian is, and it could have brought you a lot of individual attention with Brian Forrester in a heartbeat, but you chose to forsake that so she would get a leg up on this first.
Yes.
Before you put it on yours. That's been months ago.
Yeah. I want all these, and you guys too, right? I want to be here for these smaller channels because I want you guys up to my level. I don't really feel a need to go much bigger than I am because I'm big enough to be taken seriously. 50,000 subscribers. Yeah, you could take me pretty seriously, right? And like with you guys about to get to 1,000, once you have that benchmark set, you'll be taken more seriously. And that's all I want. I want my friends and colleagues who are doing good work to get the exposure that they deserve. And I've gotten plenty of exposure thanks to Jimmy at Bright Insight, and now it's my turn to pass that forward and to help everybody else out. Because it's we have to build a counter community. If the bigger communities won't let us in, if they're going to gatekeep us out, then we'll build our own community, and ours will be better.
We'll build our own roads. We'll build our own house of cards. And Eagle Eye is asking, not sure how he can help, but he will if need be. Word of mouth, because if we can get up to 1,000 subscribers, we can monetize, and it opens like a community page and things like that. That way, we're going to give all of our proceeds to charity. We're not going to profit ever from this channel. It's going to be at 100%.
Yes, I hope all the viewers appreciate that. That was something that
so
Chuck
helping spread word of mouth.
Yeah, that's how Chuck got all his 100,000 subscribers, right? Chuck at CFApps 7865. He managed to get to 100,000 subscribers with no monetization, no Patreon, no advertisements, no shilling for other channels, no bending over backwards. He stood his ground, and he got that reputation.
Content and research, integrity. Yes, integrity all the way.
I'm going to live by that. That was the model that really struck with me. Everyone else's model is secondary to Chuck's model. Chuck is the benchmark for me.
He's like the godfather of ancient history.
Really
he kept us honest, and we live his legacy. By giving credence to what he taught us and living that. He
told us to walk the walk and to put up or shut up, and that's what we're going to do.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. But anyway, I'm sure that we probably need to wrap it up for the night. But we can do a Saturday show or something.
2 hours and 32 minutes.
Yeah.
We could go for another 2.5 hours if we don't lose our voices. And if we bring a slideshow, we could have a marathon that would 12, 24 hours until we pass out. We could go on forever.
Side by side for you guys, so you can see one culture versus the other culture right there in front of you. That's gonna sell it to you. We don't need to sell it as well.
I was going to play this earlier.
3 hours later.
There you go.
What's that?
Yeah.
Oh,
3 hours later.
A SpongeBob. 3 hours later, man. That's
or 1 eternity later.
Yeah,
1 eternity later.
Yeah.
If you can bring Dave and Phil and the gang, we could just blow this door wide open.
A lot of us have been wanting.
Let's get it organized.
I'm more open now, more available now than I have been, but I know these guys have conflicting schedules, and we're talking about people in other time zones too. So this is a global effort we're doing here. We've got guys in England. I'm more on British time than I am on American time. I wake up about the same time the British guys do because they're on Twitter, and then I want to get on Twitter and talk to them. And then of course different times a day on Twitter is interesting because you'll have India. It's one time a day you'll just see nothing but posts from India. It's like, oh, I guess India is awake, or I guess
you know what I really like. I like it when people they're into something and they're passionate about. You're definitely
you can't shut up.
No, you got to make me shut up.
Get me talking about cameras and lenses and for anything photography. You can't shut me up.
Now, I might have to reference you and take your insights, because if we do any boots on the ground stuff and we need cameras for this, I don't know how to break. I've got an old DSLR Canon the first generation digital Rebel, if you know that one,
Yep.
the EOS digital Rebel.
Yep.
And it's so old that the rubberizing parts are getting gooey and falling off it. But the guy got a new battery and a SIM card or a memory card for it, and it's a good camera. And I wouldn't be so afraid of losing it or damaging it. But I mean, if I'm going to go to a site and take some pictures for you guys, I want to know what the best gear to take is, because I want to get you guys, bring something back.
You know what? Honestly, these days, an iPhone, it shoots in their pro mode. It's just awesome. There's nothing wrong with even a phone. These are catching up to DLSRs. I have a DLSR.
Oh,
it's
Shannon,
a dinosaur.
I agree. And then once we get to that point where everybody has a high-powered DSLR in their pocket that they can take and pull out and snap a photo with, that's what we're in right now. We are in this, this upsurge, this information upsurge. We're getting flooded with all these photos. You don't realize 100 years ago, you had to be a rich antiquarian with connections to even get to these sites. Now you can sit in your underwear in your bathroom and watch videos in 4K of sites you've never seen before. The
3D
kind of
virtual tours.
Yeah, those are the best ones. I love the ones that do the VRs and the 360 views. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. Documentation is just getting better and better, and that's what we need.
I hate to break this party, but if I'm feeling smoked, I'm sure Shannon's feeling the hurt. So,
dude, I just can't wait to talk to you after the show.
Guys, I can't. I would love to hear about it later if you can disclose it, but I have ideas of what it might be about.
I can't. Rob can't. It's just it will. It's one of those things that will unravel through time, and it's just remember it. It's life-changing information that we received.
I'm excited.
And I hope classified because he wouldn't be told if it were. It's just timely and sensitive, likely. So, because I just want to caveat that we're not getting anything shared with us that is classified. It's just timely and sensitive to the person on their wishes of what they want to do. So that's why we keep confidences.
We get that in the ancient history community too. Like if there's a guy on site who's taking illegal photos and he's not allowed to, we might want to wait till he gets back on our soil before we.
But when he gets out of Egypt, then post them.
On that subject, I have never had a conversation about what we call it. We call it shop. Never talk shop with Lou Elizondo. I've never done that. I talk dog.
Yep.
That's what I talked about. I talked about puppies and stuff like that.
When I said earlier this year, like in April, when Lou said he was out of social media and could not talk about shop anymore with people that were not in his working group officially, he meant that. And since then, it's just been talk of the charity or, critters and things and car repairs and things normal friends would talk about. And that well is dry, and that's okay because that's not my primary concern. It's about having personal relationships with him, despite him being so well known. I don't hold it against him. And
at the end of the day, we're all going to be together, and to whatever end. Yeah.
As long as we keep this course, it's all going to come together. We're going to have to sit down in a room together eventually about all this. Either physically or metaphysically, we're all going to have to come together on this.
Can you put your link in the chat? Well, people don't want to know who he is that just came in here. If you can put a link to your YouTube channel, pop it in the chat or something. That way they know who you are and where to find your work. He's just got this, little channel of 40,000 subs now or something.
It's about there. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll help boost you up, man. We'll throw him. We'll do you a solid.
We got credibility. Rob, we got at least credibility, right?
Right.
We got street cred.
That's right.
You don't have to worry about any of that kind of talking up to me or anything like that. I don't really consider my presence to be that overwhelming. It's 50,000 is it's to be I can be taken seriously, but I'm not interested in getting
this game. That's huge.
While he's doing that, I just had an idea. If you guys still want this picture here, that is a 5x7, and this picture right here, that is an 8x10. Throw them both in $15. If you'd like those images sent to you, email me at right here while he's doing that. I need to go to banners, and it is right here. SHANDSCOTT@yahoo.com. And if you miss it, just hit rewind by 10 seconds and write it down, and contact me, and we'll set something up, and I will have those images sent to you by Amazon. Amazon will deliver them to you no matter where you are in America. All right, let me get that out of here and back to us.
Just put in the
Alright.
chat.
Okay, we don't look at that no more. Go ahead.
And you guys can check me out on Twitter too, of course. I'll put that in the chat as well. And Rob's on Twitter as well.
Okay. Yes.
So we all have these cross-platform connections as well. It's not just YouTube. So.
Yep.
All right, Andrew, do you have any last words?
No, but thank you guys so much for having me on. This is the kind of conversation I've been waiting for weeks, months now. We've kind of gotten to a point where we need to branch out and do these cross-camp conversations. And
this is just this is the warm-up, man. Wait till you show up with pictures.
I mean, just from what me and Rob can do off air on the phone and talk, you guys are going to be really excited to see what we have to show you as far as the actual photos. No, please don't.
Yeah.
It really does take the visuals of it. You need the visuals. Really, you do. Because
Rob, any last words?
Stick a fork in me, brother.
We're done.
Take
care, everyone.
I'll take care, all right? Nothing but love for you. Nothing but love for you. You think they have any clue what's about to happen to them?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.